Okay, what's going on, family? What's going on? So I'm gonna go live for a little bit for y'all that just joined in. Shout out to y'all, everyone who just tuned in, and those who are waiting to join the live. Yes, this is for real. This is for real. So shout out to Scott Garrett Headley in the building, my brother Jetson Silencio, Akaz Trap Gabar, what's going on? Dimitri Elder, what's up? What's up? All right. So we're going to wait a few minutes for people to start coming in. Shout out to Reckless Animosity, Ryan Smith. Make sure you guys hit the thumbs up on your way in so that way we could bring this video up to the top of the search bar or search entries on YouTube. And we're going to chat for a little bit tonight, and I'm going to let y'all go. And then, later on tonight or later on today, we have our Freestyle Friday session where we really go all the way in. So today I just wanted to debrief on some things that I've shared on the channel, as well as some things that I've been seeing on YouTube and social media. So, hopefully you guys find this session valuable. All right. All right. So shout out to Ryan Smith in the building. Yapa, Kalaya, Kimberly M, Bina, Shalom, Joe King. What's going on? Consuelo F. Ryan Smith, my brother Shema, Vanessa Satterwhite. What's going on, family? What's going on? So again, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up button on your way in. If you're brand new, hit that subscribe button and check out the archives. And make sure you share this video on your social media, as well as send it to a friend. So that friend can send it to a friend and we can get it in tonight, okay? All right, so we're gonna wait. I'm gonna wait a little bit longer for y'all to join in. Give you another minute or so we can get started. All right, I don't expect to really have a crowded house today. That's usually reserved for our Freestyle Fridays. But nonetheless, if you're awake right now, then let me know, okay? Shout out to Lucky Lou in the building. What's going on? Reckless Animosity, what's going on? Shout out to my sister, Mama Wonderling in the building. Ryan Smith says, when are you coming back to Sonetta? So as y'all know, I was live on Sonetta last week or this week. I think it was last week. I think it was last week. I was live on Sonetta and I did that lecture that you guys can find on this channel. I'm supposed to be coming back there to respond to Jabari. But even though I have much love for my brother Sonetta, that platform really, to be honest with you, has a totally different agenda, totally different audience. So, I'm not planning to do a lot of shows on Sonetta. You know what I'm saying? My objective is to build this platform like I've been doing, as well as give exclusives to other platforms that are trying to build as well. I did a interview on Doggy Diamonds TV the other day. So that should be out soon whenever my brother Gregory Lewis, aka Doggy Diamonds TV, whenever he decides he wants to drop that. That was a really good interview. I think it was about an hour and a half long. We talked about a lot of different topics, man. A lot of gems was dropped on there, you know what I'm saying? So as soon as you walk into, that video, it's going to be like the game be jewels. You're going to see a whole bunch of just jewels just popping all over the place. You know what I'm saying? We had a great build, and it's platforms like that where I'm not constrained, right? My time is not restricted. And we can go into various topics other than something that is just purely religious. Which really blows my mind is that, you get on these platforms, these conscious platforms, and they want to talk about religious stuff all the time. And it's like, yo, I thought y'all was conscious. Like, y'all don't want to evolve past this and get into the culture or talk about current events or, find out what different ways we can inspire the community to rebuild. You know what I'm saying? What gems can we give? What practical solutions can we provide? It's like they don't want to talk about this stuff. You know what I'm saying? They want to stick on things that is purely religious. And you thinking that, oh, you conscious, that means you don't want to deal with religion. And all they want to do is religion. Talk about religion, argue about religion. It's like, yo, what's going on with that? You feel what I'm saying? Like, it's truly disappointing. You know what I'm saying? That these conscious communities, don't want to talk about something other than religion. It's crazy. You know what I'm saying? They say, oh, well, we bang on religion because our people are stuck in religion. Well, that's fine. Why don't you teach? Right? Why don't you teach something? right? Teach something. And if you teach something, then the people will come. They'll know what they're entangled with and they'll know how to get out of it. That's it. Give them the tools, train them up, teach and guide them and let them do the rest themselves. You know what I'm saying? And that's how I look at it. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to Mama Wendling says about health, culture, life, etc. Yes, it's holistic. You know what I'm saying? Religion is something that we are steadily moving past by removing the shackles of dogma. And when you remove those shackles, like Sister Mama Wonderling was saying, is like, when you're Christianity, you perceive everything to be evil. And it's like, well, it's not evil. It's just dysfunctional when you try to integrate it into your particular sphere of culture. You understand what I'm saying? So you have to be able to keep things in alignment with the path in which you're going along, because if you add anything else that is not conducive for you to pioneer or to trailblaze to the destination you're going, then it's only going to trap you up. You know what I'm saying? So that's how we got to look at things going forward. You know what I'm saying? And the things that we should avoid are the things that is outside of the cultural sphere of influence in which we want to produce, or which we're receiving, right? Or that which we're inside. Right. And remember, that boundary is that boundary of protection. And that cultural protection is designed to create this barrier to prevent any outside forces, wherever they may be, in whatever form they may be, from undermining and overthrowing and usurping what it is that has been established. The ancient way points that have been laid down through the blueprints that we received in order for us to get to where we're trying to go. You know what I'm saying? So, I don't mind being on that platform, just like I don't mind being on other platforms. But when they just limit it to just arguing about religious stuff, it's just like, this is so much more, you know what I'm saying, that I can offer the community. Like, I can't just continuously be on a platform that's just limiting me to just talking about things or defending religion. And I was like, yo, I get on that platform trying to speak academic, you know what I'm saying, try to show a little bit of scholarship. So hopefully thinking that the people will meet me there, but it's like, they're all opposed to religion. It's like, yo, I'm right here though. So like, why are y'all right here? Like, I'm right here. Let's self-actualize. Let's get a little further. All right. Shout out to my brother, Jordan's Cadet, for the donation. I appreciate that, my brother. Thank you so much. All right. So again, it's a cycle that's never ending. You know what I'm saying? And that's what happens with people who are religious. Conscious folk is religious. You feel what I'm saying? And that's what happens. You know what I'm saying? They get stuck in this endless loop and never really evolve from there. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I feel about that. But again, I was asked to respond to the misogyny in the Bible that was proposed by Jabari Osaze. So I'm gonna go and I'm gonna respond to that one particular verse that he pulled out, but he's pulled out other verses before on that platform. He has a PowerPoint that he goes through all the time, the same PowerPoint he goes through all the time, in regards to trying to show that there's misogyny in the scriptures. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay out several of those scriptures, and I'm going to give a formal response to those scriptures. And then once we're done dealing with it from the Israelite perspective, then I'm going to jump into the Kemetic perspective, and I'm going to show him there's a lot of skeletons in that closet over there. A lot of skeletons. I showed it to y'all in here. You know what I'm saying? When a woman was caught in adultery, several things happened to her. One of the things that she was chopped up in pieces and fed to the dogs. Another one, she was thrown in the water and fed to crocodiles. I mean, can y'all defend that? You're talking about, a woman who is betrothed to a husband or engaged to a husband, and during that period of time of engagement where the bride price is given to the father to alleviate the burden that is placed on the household. So that way the woman can prepare herself to unify with this man. And remember, the woman always has the choice. The father asks the daughter, hey, look, here's somebody that we, have for you, or somebody that wants to wed you. Do you want to do that? You got to go into the story of Isaac and Rebecca. Rebecca was given a choice and she was asked, do you want to link up with this guy? She said, yes. So she's given that option. So if she's not a virgin, she could say simply, no, Dad, I don't want to get married. You know what I'm saying? And admit to her father, listen, Dad, I'm not a virgin anymore, blah, blah. The purpose of, these capital punishments for capital offenses was to deter people from going down a path that was not conducive to the progress of the culture, right? So if she's playing the whore, so the key word is whore. So it's not like she just lost her virginity to a man. It's like She's playing the whore in her father's house. She has, destroyed the line of communication to the father, and she has agreed to something knowing that it was ethically and morally wrong to do. You do not wed a man and not let him know that you're no longer a virgin. Okay, like you have to have honesty. So this is why these procedures put in place, but does not mean that it was acted on all the time. When we go back and look into the archaeology of ancient Iron Age, pre-Exilic Israel, like culture, we don't see a whole bunch of stoning pits for these things. You know what I'm saying? Where you see a bunch of women's bones just in a pit and just people just stoning, throwing rocks at them. Like the reason why is because the people was already engulfed in a culture, and they knew that this is something that is taboo, and that because it's taboo, or a taboo was placed on these type of actions, we're going to avoid it. You know what I'm saying? Shout out to my brother Brian Gaither in the building. Got to support my bro. We got work to do. Let us make man season. Shout out to my brother Brian Gaither. If you're on Facebook, I want you guys to link up with my brother Brian Gaither. They're doing a Let Us Make Man session, another session that's coming up. And the objective of that is to raise up the youth and show them how to walk as men. So you have tons of breakout sessions and workshops and so forth. So great thing that they have going on. Brian, send me the flyer so I can go ahead and promote it on the channel as well. All right. Jordan's Cadet says culture is the library of solutions produced by people group. Yes, over a period of time, through a series of trial and error. This is why when people do Midrash Halakha today, the objective of that is to build onto that template. So that way you're using the cultural framework to adapt to the environment in which you live. You know what I'm saying? Like the foundation is there, but you got to build a house on it. And that's the problem with people who are purely religious, is like they just stick to the script and that's it. And they wonder why they cannot function with it in different environments. It's because you have to adapt this script to your contemporary environment. Use the principles and the things that are outlined in here and transform it into a way where it can yield results in your current environment. So some of the things that are there work greatly. Some things are not explicit, that you have to yourself decide from the principles of the culture. How do I create a solution? Using the principles of the culture, how do I create a solution to fix this real world societal ill that I'm facing, or my community's facing, or my family's facing right now? And people can't take it from the text into real life. They just can't. You know what I'm saying? So they're walking around rigid, and they're walking around just like, because they don't know how to use the flexibility that was given with the text on how to act it out in the real world. So that's what we try to do here. We try to reconstruct it and show you how to restore it. You feel what I'm saying? All right. K. Israel said, you and Zion Lex is a great team. Shalom. I appreciate that. Yes, my brother Zion Lex, he's putting in good work. I support that brother. We don't agree on everything, but the things that we do agree on, I know that he's strong in certain areas. I'm strong in certain areas. And if we do work together, you know what I'm saying, depending upon whoever the foe is, I just feel bad whoever's the person on the receiving end of it. But more than likely, they pick the fight. You know what I'm saying? So that's just what it is. You know what I'm saying? Unwillingness to learn change keeps you in fear and keeps you in dogmatic bondage. Facts. I agree. Shout out to Carolyn Shelton. Good evening to you as well, my sister. All right. Now, lady culture. How is it okay to build on but not make sure the foundation is secure? Now, please enlighten us. Okay. I've seen you leave a lot of weird comments on this channel. Weird comments. Not saying you're weird. I don't know. I don't know if you're trolling. I don't know what's going on, but I don't even know if you're male or female. I don't know. From the picture, it looks like you're a female, but I'm not sure what you mean by that. Can you elaborate? Can you give more information? Again, I'm gonna open up the panel, so if you want to get on and speak, I would love for you to do so. But I don't know what you mean by that. I need you to go in a little further. All right. James Clark says, Cameron trial exposed Egypt. They couldn't answer those questions from 5 years ago. Debates are pointless. I want to learn and build. Drop some jewels, young blood. I appreciate that, Elder. Elder James in the building. What's going on, Elder? All right. Does identity matter when you're in it? I don't understand what that means. What does that mean? What you mean when you're in it? I'm not sure what you're talking about there. I have no clue what you're talking about. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, Sister Vanessa. I hope you're okay. You know what I'm saying? We haven't had any power outages on this side of the city. So I'm not sure what's going on in your neck of the woods, but I hope everything is okay. Make sure they prorate your bill. Anytime that happens, make sure you get, you get paid, not paid, you're like they're keeping you from paying, but make sure you get reimbursed for what you put out for your bill. All right. I went from a psalm to a proverb to an it. What? I don't understand. You're not coherent. What do you mean by that? Are you talking about you personally? You talking about our community? I'm not sure what you mean by that. I don't know what's going on. Shout out to my sister Tamika in the building. What's going on? What's going on? Okay, that's good to know, Vanessa. That's good to know. Ryan said she's just trolling. Yeah, I know. She says the female gods. Would you like to come on the panel and have a discussion, Lady Culture? Let me know. All right. Reckless says, DP, are you still coming to Be More? Yes, I'm still coming to Be More. 3 cities that I still plan. Well, 4 cities now. I might not be in New York, but I do plan to come into Houston, Baltimore, DC. That's going to be the same trip. Houston, Baltimore, DC, LA, and North Carolina. All right. So those are the 4 places that I plan to come to by the end of this year. I might circle back around to Orlando and New Orleans, but that's not definitive yet. Okay. I'm still working on that. All right. So Baltimore, DC will be in September. All right. People need to study the actual text. I think that it is an issue in our community. We don't take the time to study on scholarly terms. I agree. So I've said this a million times. There may be new people in here. Shout out to K Israel in the building. Thank you so much. Hit that thumbs up button. Shout out to my sister Millie Love. What's going on, sis? What's going on? The true female gods understand how King James. Okay, so people need to study the actual text, and I agree, right? I think we need institutions that can teach our community to be holistic with the information, right? When you're holistic with information, you can use the cultural paradigm to resolve issues in various areas of your life, right? Whether it's economics, whether it's social issues, political issues, health issues, you know what I'm saying? Whatever the issue is, you should be able to have a cultural paradigm that can take care of all of these ills. You should have enough principles within your cultural paradigm that you can lift it off the page and be able to implement it in these various areas and resolve issues, and be able to also create services to help the community. You know what I'm saying? So Sister Carolyn Shelton says, are you coming to Indiana? I have no plans to come to Indiana unless we have a lot of people that follow the ministry there. And if so, I have no problem coming out there. Shout out to my brother, Ro A, the chef. He says, let me know when you touch down in Houston. Yes, everybody will get at least a 2 weeks notice when I make it to any of these cities. All right, family, a 2 weeks notice. All right. So again, in the community tab on YouTube, I will post the flyer, before I come to these cities. So you guys have a heads up, and it also will be on my other social media platforms. All right. You have to give people a sense of safety when using logic to study the text. Facts. We need to throw away canonical ideas, especially ones not from our culture. Facts. You see, this is why I love the people that follow this ministry, because they understand. Y'all get it. You know what I'm saying? People may think, because, and I'm going to tell you what's really strange. When people see the stuff that I teach on here, stuff I share on here, some people who are religiously dogmatic, like, oh, he's off, he's going off. And it's like, nah, this is the next level. You know what I'm saying? That's like playing a video game and you get stuck on level 5 and you go into your friend's house and he's playing a game and he's like, yo, what's all of that? Like, he's like, bro, I'm on level 20, bro. You still on level 5. It's so they get mad, like, how you get to level 20? I'm having these issues, instead of saying, yo, show me how you got to level 20. You feel what I'm saying? Like, this is the next level. This is the next step. You feel what I'm saying? This is how you evolve. And we're not devolving away. What we're doing is evolving back to the state that was left behind for us to pick up and keep moving. See, that's the issue. When people see this ministry, they get confused. They think, man, he's going off. And nah, how am I going off? I still identify as an Israelite, right? I still subscribe to the patron deity, Yod Hey Wav. You know what I'm saying? Right? I still keep the statute, laws, and commandments. It's just the way I implement it is different than you guys. The way I reconstruct it and restore it is different than you guys, right? So the objective is to be on the cutting edge, which is important, and to be ahead of the curve, because now the community is under scrutiny. And the problem is a lot of the claims that used to be made fall short. And we don't have institutions. We don't have rock solid communities that are autonomous set up. So it's very difficult for us to point to an example and say, look, this is how it's done. We are blackwashing things and trying to claim it as our own instead of reconstructing it from the ground up inductively and saying, no, that's not how it's supposed to be. This is how it's supposed to be. A lot of people don't even know how to transform what they see in the text into everyday life. If you cannot bring solutions in the real world from reading that text, why do you have it? Get rid of it. Find something else. It's that simple. Shout out to 617. Let's get it, bro. That hell concept is a hell of a drug. Facts. I told you I'm going to hell. Oh, wait, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Wait a second. Wait, there's probably some people that's watching this that's saying, yo, Divine just said he's going to hell. I told you when I go there, I'm taking selfies, taking pictures and all of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not playing games when we go to hell, man. You know what I'm saying? I've seen it. I've seen video of it. I've seen pictures of it. I've heard people tell me about it. It looks like it's a pretty cool place. I'm actually have a picnic when I go there too. You know what I'm saying? And I'll take some selfies and everything like that. And then I'll send you guys the pictures so you can see. But it's stuff like this. It's like I'll make a comment like that. Some religious dogmatic person hears, oh, you say he's going to hell. You see, I told you, blah, blah, blah. It's like, instead of saying, well, what do you mean by that? Oh, I'm talking about the valley of Ben Hinnom, the Gehenna, that valley, that area that's there that used to be a refuge for the city back in 1st century CE Palestine. You know what I'm saying? And then prior to that was the Valley of Judgment, called the Valley of Ben Hinnom. And it's that region right there, which became, a visual representation of either judgment or of something being destroyed. And that valley today is a place that you can actually go. It's just the spookism of it keeps a lot of people from venturing there, but it's there today. And it's lush. It has a lot of green, pasture that's there and everything. You see how easy that is? It's when you inquire instead of assuming, you get to understand what I'm talking about. See, that's the problem. You say stuff like that, it gets people sticker shock. Like, oh, what you say you're gonna sure. And I'm like, yo, did you not read the text? Oh, you know what? You gotta get into the language because that word hell is general, right? But when you go underlining it, there's other words. Sheol, which just means the grave or the abode of the dead, right? The word Gehenna, which is an actual live place when things occur at. The word Hades is there also. And and the word Tartarus is there. These are all the various terms that's used for hell in the text, in both your Tanakh and your Brit Hadashah. So it's not, there's nothing to freak out over. Just ask. Say, yo, what you mean by that? That's how I learn. Somebody says something I don't understand. I just inquire and say, what do you mean? Can you explain that to me? Can you show me? I don't know what's going on, man. So my brother, Sean McGee says, how much do you believe we should glean from the Midrash and do you feel it is a work of Israel, maybe converts to Judaism? So in regards to the Midrash is supposed to be, Mishnah. I'm thinking Midrash. Mishnah. So the Mishnah is a collation of the various rulings from the Sanhedrin Council that was codified in 200 CE and placed on documentation because they believed that they would be scattered and they wanted to keep the oral traditions that was settled through the rulings from the Sanhedrin and through tradition, right? That's the oral tradition. And that's during that period of time. So that is post-exilic stuff. Now, if you go into the Roman Academia, the earliest that they dated is to the time of Ezra and Nehemiah or Nehemiah. And during that period on, that what started to happen was the familial cults that was occurring in Israel at that time, the traditions from the familial cults. And that word cult is not always a bad thing. It's just how you apply it. Cult can mean just practice and customs that I do with amongst my family that is not done outside of my family. So if you have a custom amongst your family members that's not done outside, that your peers and other people don't perform, then that's a cultic practice. That's what that means. That's what it, and that's how the term is used in anthropology for the past. You know what I'm saying? Even in archaeology, which is a subcategory of anthropology, right? So I believe in the Mishnah, there is some good information in the Mishnah, right? But these rulings were based during that period of time that was collated from the return back to Israel, or Jerusalem. And from that time to 200 CE, and then you have the Gemara that was added to it in the close of the Talmud that comes much later. So I would say that there's good information in there so that you can read it. It's like somebody who's a lawyer and they're going into case law and they're studying case law. You know what I'm saying? So case law, you go back and say, okay, what's the precedent? This was set. This was good. Okay. But then going forward, rulings can overturn that case law based on the current political, social situation, legal situation. You understand what I'm saying? So I'm saying that what we can do amongst our congregations, our communities, is we can have our own Mishnah. You know what I'm saying? I don't bind myself to the Talmud. I don't bind myself to the Mishnah. I don't bind myself to that because we can create our own. People hear that, like, oh, what you talking about? That's crazy, blah, blah. I'm like, nah, it's not. It's not crazy. Some people don't think they're capable of doing that. You understand what I'm saying? So, I think that it's a mixture of indigenous Judeans and converts that sat on the high and lower courts of the Sanhedrin that over time codified that. But a lot of that was kept, from the inception of the rebuilding of the temple all the way into 200 CE when it was actually laid down. But a lot of it is pulled or derived from familiar cults and familiar traditions and practices within the home. So I have an article. Matter of fact, I think I have a book on that. If you're interested in learning about where these Second Temple Judaic practices come from, a lot of them is codified in the Mishnah, but you'll be able to see over time how they're pulled from local customs and local practices and codified into what's called the Mishnah, right? Because these are things that they have assumed into the elitists or the elites of Israel at that time. And then they use that knowledge to do their rulings because the rulings was based on the template of the oral Torah and the written Torah. And they use that to rule over certain things. One of those things is the Sabbath. And you'll see Mishnah on the Sabbath, right? Things to do and not to do on the Sabbath. You understand? So hopefully that begins to answer that question. Okay. Yeah, facts. That's all. Shout out to Sister Consuelo F. Do you have information in the Patreon about the list on the different punishment of the sins committed, such as capital punishment on the subject you did on is all the sin the same? So if you're interested in that document, and that's interesting that you say that, sis, because I was actually going to bring that up. I was actually going to bring it up to make a point. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick. All right. So here it is. And where is here's the other one. All right. So I got two lists that I got from two sources. And then I got my own list that I'm working on, right? 613, that is not something that would have been used in ancient periods of Israel, right? This is something that came through from the Talmud and the sages, right? Categorizing the various statutes, laws, and commandments, okay? But I do want you guys to see these two documents here. And that was a great point because I brought this out when I created the list of things because, Christians say all the time, and I have to correct them. Well, when you broke a law, you gotta give a sacrifice. I'm like, what? What you mean? When you broke a law, you got to give a sacrifice. That's not true. That's not true. Sister Carolyn said, Cash App information, please. Sure, I'll put the Cash App here. It's really easy. It's hashtag DivineProspect, and you can also see it down below in the description below. All right. Thank you so much for your donation. Sister Carolyn. I appreciate that. All right. All right. So Just Call Me Text says, how do I get that document? Just email me. Email me. There you go. There's the email address right there. And now don't worry. Don't worry. I have 4 series that I'm going to be doing. 4 series that I'm working on. Back to Basics, which deal with like cultural things. I'm going over all the statute laws and commandments, each and every one. That's going to take probably some time to get through all of them. I'm going over the one Depth to Dogma. We're going to deal with all the dogmas that's been established through church tradition, church history, church fathers. We're going to deal with that. And then what was the other one? I forgot what the 4th one is. It'll come to me. But when I do these series, I'm going to comb through all of this information and I'm going to try to make it as visual as possible so that way people can get it. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to try to take a different direction in regards to what we do here on this channel and make it more bite-sized so people can take it in. All right. All right. Thank you so much, Sister Mama Wonderling. She said that was an awesome lecture. I think that was a great lecture because, you know, a lot of Christians, I mean, in their mind, they don't understand that there were certain capital punishments where no sacrifice could be given. Like you got to die. You know what I'm saying? So some laws you got to die. Some laws you're allowed to give a sacrifice if you broke. Some laws you were cut off, or some laws made you unclean. So you was unclean. You was either unclean, cut off. You had to give a sacrifice, or you was killed. You see that? 4 categories: unclean, cut off, give a sacrifice, capital punishment. So anytime a Christian says to you, well, every time you break a law, don't you got to do A, B, C? When you break the law, when you break the law, when you break the law, I'm like, where y'all getting this information from? Where's this information coming from? Are we reading the same text? Are we reading the same text? I guess not. We must not be reading the same text. Apparently, when I'm reading it, I see that there's things in there where you don't have to give a sacrifice. That's how you know that these people don't understand anything about the culture. They're thinking of it in legalistic terms, but we go back to the pre-exilic state where it's just a culture. This is just how people live. Your culture dictates your spirituality. If you get entrenched in Black culture in America, that equates to being a Christian. Now it's becoming more conscious, right? Like in maybe about when the Nation of Islam started to come about, it branched off into more consciousness, and you got, you know, Afrocentrism that started to come out. Now became more conscious. Now you have these elements that are ingrained or integrated into Black culture in America. But for the most part, those are minorities. The majority is Christianity. So if you adopt Black culture in America, chances are it's going to lead you to Christianity. That's how it works. People say, oh, how can you get that? Your spiritual. You cannot have a spirituality without culture. You can't even learn about what the spirit is without something to define it. It comes from your culture. It's that simple. So Carolyn Shelton, she said, Brother Ron, has the KJV been tampered with from your studies? I don't know what you mean when you say tampered with, sis. What I will say is that the King James is a dated version. It's very old. It's a couple of 100 years old. And several translations has been done since then, but I encourage people to learn the language so you can translate it yourself or fact check it yourself. The King James was pulled from the Masoretic text, or the majority text from the Old Testament manuscripts. And it was also pulled from Greek manuscripts from Beza, Stephanos, and Erasmus, right? These are scholars, you know, who had, you know, their own version of the Greek manuscripts. And those things were used to create the Textus Receptus. And the Textus Receptus, which is a brand new Greek text, was then translated into what you see now in the New Testament. Okay. But remember, the King James Version was not the first of its kind. There was other English translations. You had the Tyndale Bible, you had the Geneva Bible, you have the Bible that was brought over by the Pilgrims, you know what I'm saying, etc. So there was various English translations, and a lot of the King James was also measured against the Tyndale version, which preceded it. You know what I'm saying? So I would say that you'll find things in there that comes from the majority text type. So the majority text type would be your Byzantine text, right? So you have various families of manuscripts, right? You have the Alexandrian text. This is for the New Testament. You have the Western. So Alexandria, where most of those manuscripts is found in Alexandria in Egypt. You have the Western text. Most of those are what you find in Europe, more so in Rome, or Italy, and along the coastal regions of the Mediterranean. Then you have your Byzantine, is when the church switched its headquarters over to Byzantium in Turkey, and then manuscripts started being produced over there. So those manuscripts, because they were produced for a much longer period of time, became the majority text. And that majority text is the version that a lot of people had over time, where the other versions, the Western text, which was then preserved in the Roman Catholic Church, but then you had the Alexandrian text, which went out of usage, right? But over time, through excavations, they rediscovered a lot of these Alexandrian texts, and they found out that if you look at the majority text, which is the Byzantium family, and the Alexandrian text, you'll see that there's a lot of interpolations that wind up in the majority text. Why? Because over time, people are copying. And then the people that are copying all the time, all of them are not always, what we call scholars or trained scribes. And number two, all of them have some kind of, theological position, right? Number three, sometimes the scribes will put marginal notes and they'll find their way into the text. So we see a lot of that happening when we get to the majority text type. And the representative of that would be the Byzantium text. And again, what Erasmus had, what Beza had, what Stephanos had, there's Greek manuscripts all comes from the majority text. You know what I'm saying? But now when we uncover, these older manuscripts from Alexandria and Egypt, we see that there's a lot of things that they don't have. An example of that would be the woman caught in adultery in the book of John, chapter 8. Well, that's not there in the earliest manuscripts. You also have your 1 John chapter 5, verse 7. That's not found in the earliest manuscripts. You also had in the book of Mark chapter 16. I mean, the latter half of it is not even found in the earliest manuscripts. And then you see textual variants and so forth. However, even amongst looking at all these manuscripts, they do agree in maybe about 80% or more places, which goes to show the textual transmission rate. Transmission rate is how well does the things you write here in, let's say, 100 AD, how they end up in 1000 AD, over 900 years, what is the transmission rate? And it has a really good transmission rate. It's the same thing for the Tanakh. It has a really good transmission rate over a long period of time. And you see this by looking at manuscripts from an earlier period and manuscripts from a later period, and you're able to check the transmission rate over time. You know what I'm saying? So these things are good to know, so that way, as you're getting into these translations, you understand. You also have your formal equivalency translations, which are the ones where the translators try to translate from the Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek word for word as much as possible. And then you have the dynamic equivalency translations, which try to translate from your thought for thought. So you'll see a line in the Hebrew, Aramaic, or Greek, and you'll try to translate it thought for thought, right? So that way idioms could be understood, and various poetry could be understood, etc. Okay, so that's good to know, to understand these things as you're getting into the text. So the actual text that I get into, the translation that I use the most, is the ESV. Some of y'all will notice that by seeing this, or I'll just go into the language, right? I go into the language. And if you want a great resource for learning the language, this right here, this is your go-to. For those of you who really want to go into the language. Now, there's various levels to this. Like me, I love reading, about languages, right? More particularly biblical Hebrew, which is my favorite language to read. But this book right here is awesome. Okay. This book and this reference right here. Okay. So you can order both of these items off of Amazon. Okay. So these two items right here are my go-tos as a reference, right? Also, I reference this book as well. This has helped me also with my Hebrew grammar and vocabulary. Okay, it says building competency with words occurring 50 times or more. Once you learn the most frequent 50 used words, you'll be able to make your way through almost any passage. Almost any passage. Not every passage, but almost any passage. All right. So when I do these like back to basics and stuff like that, I'm going to break down these things where I explain about the different translations. I'll read the preface for each one of these translations. I'll explain what a critical edition Bible is, that have the footnotes that you'll find as you're reading it. You'll see A, B, C, D, F, and G. These are all referred to footnotes at the bottom that either reference textual variants or gives further elaboration, or says to you, Earlier manuscripts don't possess this verse, or whatever the case may be. So I'll go over Bibles and how to actually understand the Bibles you have and how to fact check what you read. Because sometimes you may encounter something difficult in the Bibles and you'll find things such as glosses, right? So a linguistic gloss is anything that is when you have an ancient word and you impose a modern or contemporary semantic value to it. And I'll give you an example of that, right? And I use this one all the time. The word sefer. Sefer, when you look at it in English Bibles, it's translated as book, but it's really a scroll because books did not exist during the pre-Israelite period. There was no books there. You know, the first books came about through the codices of Christian literature, right? And Christian translations, right? But prior to that, you only have scrolls. So that's a linguistic gloss. When you take a modern contemporary semantic value, semantic is just a meaning, and then you apply it onto an old ancient word, right? Now, there's a big problem with that. Big problem that is that you start to think about the text in modern day terms, and that disconnects you from the context. So what I try to do is point these things out so we can understand. There's various books written on this as well to help you really get further into it. Yes, the ESV is the Eastern, is the English Standard Version. English Standard Version. All right. And then on the Patreon, you know, I have the book on the Patreon where I said, as you're learning the language, again, use this as your go-to. As you're learning language, you want to be able to get a Bible that will help you to understand as you're following along learning the language. And this is why I recommend interlinear Bibles, right? Interlinear will give you your English translation on the side, right here in the margin. But then in the core, you'll have the Hebrew as the Hebrew is written from right to left. And then you'll have the direct translation of each one of those Hebrew words, right? So it may not make coherent sense when you're looking at English grammar, but it helps you to get into the mindset on how it would be read and understood by somebody who understands Hebrew. And it gets you into that mindset to understand how Hebrew language flows and how the grammar flows. All right. So hopefully that begins to help. All right. Can you put the names of those in the chat? I could do one better. I could just show it to you, or Carolyn Shelton or Bina, you guys can email me, right? If you want to email me, I can send you all these sources, or you can sign up for our Patreon. And on my Patreon, I have all these sources there available for free. Okay. So what I wanted to show was the statute, laws, and commandments, which I'm going to show. And then I also want to show you something else real quick. Okay. So let me show you. Let me show you this interlinear. Okay, that would be here. Let me pull it up. All right, so I'm gonna show you all of these things that we're talking about, right? Let me bring it on the screen so you guys can see. All right, so first off, the Biblia Hebraica Stuttgartensia. This is the standard Hebrew text that most modern translations are derived from or translated from. This right here is the Hebrew English Interlinear ESV Old Testament. As you can see, there's a PDF version. Again, you can get it on our Patreon, or you can purchase the physical book for yourself. But I'll go ahead and zoom in so you guys can see what I'm talking about in regards to learning the language. All right, so as you can see, over here in the margin on the right, you have the English translation. But here in the core in the center, you have the Hebrew. Bereshit bara Elohim et ha-shamayim ve'et ha'eretz ve'ha'eretz. And you go on, ha-ta. Then you have your hotu and you have your vabohu. So this is like your tohu, vabohu or behu. This is your like formlessness and void. But when you go into the roots of these words, you also see it show up in the book of Jeremiah, I think it is, Yirmiyahu, where this is the only other place that you see this combination of words and what this actually means, right? You have your ve, chodeshek, then you have your al, panai on the face, te, then you have your deep, your hey, your cholam over the wav, and your mem. So as you're reading, you get to see like, okay, here, Bereshit, bara, you have the action, he. This is singular, masculine, singular, verb. Then you have Elohim. This is masculine, plural because of the suffix. Your hirik, your yod, and your mem, your it, which is your direct object marker, hence why there's nothing to directly translate it. Your definite article, ha, shamayim, right? Shamayim, not shamayim, it's shamayim, right? And you know that because you have the patach, and you have your yod, your hidik, and your mem, shamayim, right? Your ve'it, again, you have your direct object marker, but you also have the conjunction, inseparable conjunction here, which is your wav, which is shewa underneath. Your ha, your direct, your definite article again, and your aretz, which can mean land. Sometimes they say it's earth. I don't really like to use the term earth because that's another linguistic gloss, right? This notion of the earth during that period of time, it wasn't known the way we know it colloquially today, right? It was just a large landmass with waters that was in different areas, right? And they also believe there was a canopy of waters above as well. This is when you get people who subscribe to the flat earth theory where it says that earth is in a dome. Well, if you go back to ancient times, this is how they describe the earth, right? As a dome. You know what I'm saying? This is why when you see the circle of the earth that's mentioned, the chug, the circle of the earth that's mentioned in the book of Yeshayahu, Isaiah, that's where the Most High sits on, the circle of the earth, right? Over that canopy, okay? But this Bible right here, as you're learning the language, right? As you're learning the language, you're learning, you know, various aspects of the language. You can also go into your book here. And as you go into your quick book guide, like, for example, if you're trying to learn about constructs, right? What is a construct? Construct is what I was showing you guys the other day when we was looking at Bereshit or Genesis chapter 2, verse 24. We saw the word ishet. And I was like, okay, ishet, is this plural or is this singular, right? That's your construct state. Construct state normally shows possession, and the construct state follows what the actual noun is, right? So you have the construct state is the object that belongs to whatever the subject is, right? So if I say a stall of horses, the horses is possession of the stall. If I say my horses, right, you'll have your yod suffix, which shows possessive. But then also if I say the house of David, if I say Beit Dawid or Bat Dawid or house of David, house would be your construct, and David would actually be the subject or the noun. And if I say Ha Dawid or the David, it would be the houses of the David. If I said house of David in the indefinite, the construct form follows whatever the absolute noun is. Okay. So that's how you can start to determine these things. But you can learn this by looking into this book and examining what is the construct state. You know what I'm saying? Because you have a construct state for masculine singular, masculine plural, feminine singular, feminine plural. You know what I'm saying? You have your oath, which would be your plural for feminine, but then that changes when you look at the singular. This is why I was showing you the shit. It should be really your patak tav. Your patak tav, your at, which really would be your construct state of the feminine singular noun. But these are technical things that you'll start to learn as you get into the language. Now, there's a lot of people that follow this channel that like to go into, you know, the language. Facts, Moray. Yeah, that's why I use it. That's why I use it a lot. Because you see it says in beginning, because you have your inseparable preposition, your bait prefix, then you have reshit, right? And some places in English translations, it says in the beginning, but there's no definite article there, right? It's just your preposition in bereshit. But in Western thinking, they always want to know the beginning of the beginning of the beginning of the beginning, the God of the God, the God of the God. But in Eastern terms, they're not concerned about that. See, this is why Greek philosophy has infiltrated into the Greek language that then puts you into the mind of a Greek philosopher when you read it in the Greek. And then you understand, you know, works as written in the Greek, and all they're doing is talking about what's the possibility of this, of that, of this, of that, of this. And this is the problem with us being in the Western world, is that now we think like the Western world. We're not thinking like the concrete, you know, individuals that put this text together in Hebrew. Even when you go into the Brit Hadashah, you'll see there's a lot of Aramaisms in here. And if you don't understand Aramaic, at least using, like I use, the Syriac to kind of measure and try to understand what the Aramaisms are, you'll be in trouble. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna give you a resource on that in 1 second. But this is the Interlinear Bible. If anybody's interested in this, let me know. And I can either send it to you, or you can sign up for the Patreon and get this and other sources, right? So here's another source right here I want to show you guys on the screen, right? This is the one that goes into or categorizes the statute, law, and the commandments. So one category is God or Yod-Heh-Wav-Heh. The other one is the law itself, signs and symbols, prayer and blessings, love and brotherhood, the poor and unfortunate, right? This one goes to treatment of Gentiles, marriage, divorce, and family, okay? Then it goes in further to forbidden sexual relations. It goes to times and seasons, reckoning of time, dietary laws, business practices, employees, servants, and slaves. Even though that term slave, abed, you know, it's the way we think about slavery today is like what happened to Africans in the diaspora in the Americas and how they were treated. But that's not how it's looked at during that period of time, unless you're a prisoner of war, right? If you're a Gentile living amongst the Israelites, you can be a perpetual servant. Or if you're an Israelite yourself, you can sell yourself into slavery or offer yourself as a servant. But real actual slaves that have no rights are really prisoners of war, right? And that's something, if you study the ancient Near East, is something that's common, right? Vows, oaths, and swearing, the sabbatical and jubilee years, the court and judicial procedure, okay? Injuries and damages, property and property rights, criminal laws, punishment and restitution, prophecy, agriculture and animal husbandry or pastoralism, right? Clothing, the firstborn, high priest, priests, and Levites, okay? Tithes, taxes, and teruma, which is the Hebrew offerings, the temple, the sanctuary, and sacred objects, which would be called fetishes. That's how the Christian missionaries would call these items. Sacrifices and offerings. Keep going. Ritual purity and impurity. Lepers and leprosy. The king, right? The Melech, right? The Nazarites. Wars. Not to degrade a beautiful woman taken into war to the condition of a bondwoman. See that? Deuteronomy 21:14. Not to sell a beautiful woman taken into captive. So the problem with this is that you can see some of these things are repetitive. Like, how are these two different laws when it's talking about the same thing and it's referring to the same verse? So this is why I've combed through and filtered it and why I'm reconstructing my own. The 613 is just, to me, is informal, right? It shouldn't be used, okay? But that's how people know it, because they're getting that from Second Temple Judaism, through the sages, you know, the rabbis, rabbinical school, etc., right? But then it goes on further and further, on and on, more and more, right? So this is, everybody should have a copy of this. Everybody should be able to go through it. And anytime there's an area of your life when you're trying to figure out, well, how should I handle with finances? How should I handle with employees? How should I handle with dealing with people of other nations? Well, everything is contained here. The question is, can you transform what you're reading here into a contemporary method that can resolve issues today? All right. The other one I have here goes into the 248 positive commandments, 265 negative commandments, right? And this categorizing things similarly, but it breaks it down into positive and negative commandments, right? Which is, again, something done by the rabbinic sages, okay? So these two sources, I think, is invaluable, and I think everybody should have a copy of this. Everybody should have this one as well. Now, there's also a Greek one. For those of you who want to get into the New Testament, there's a Greek one as well. This one also, we, you know, drop it down. Let's say this is Ruth and Boaz. You know what I'm saying? You can see here, you have your word Ruth here. You have your Resh right here. You have your Wav with the dagesh in the middle, gives you the sound. And you have your TH sound because there's no dagesh in the middle of the top, Ruth, right? So again, as you're going through the language and you're learning the language, you get to read it alongside the English translation and the direct translation into English, the mechanical way that it's actually understood and read in Hebrew. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to as you're seeing how it's flowing here on the left side, right? These are invaluable resources that I believe that everybody needs. This is the book that I have here. This one goes into the introduction to Syriac, which I said is good. Now, there's another book I want to show you guys. Another book that's really good as well, right? Let me show you this, all right? And And yes, guys, don't forget to like and subscribe. Please hit the thumbs up, hit subscribe. See, this is the stuff that needs to be taught by people in our community. You know, how can you compete with the Judaism and Christianities if you don't even understand how those systems are formed? You know what I'm saying? You have to understand these things. All right. Facts. Man, you're good, man. Roe said, what's the source again? The source for what? What you need? Let me know. All right, I want to show you guys something real quick. I want you guys to see this source and to know what my position is on some things. This is a great resource as well. Again, I wouldn't tout this as an academic source. This is somebody that understands language. I decided to put a book together. But there are similar books that are written along these lines. But I want to show you guys this source real quick. Let me show you guys this source. Let me pull this source up. All right. So this book here is called, Was the New Testament Really Written in Greek? A Concise Compendium of the Many Internal and External Evidences of Aramaic Peshitta Primacy. Now, I wouldn't say the Peshitta, because that's a word in Syriac or Middle Aramaic, which means something that's transmitted, right? I wouldn't say the Peshitta is really, that is not contemporaneous with the rise of Syriac. The Syriac predates the Peshitta text or translation, right? They call it a translation. But the reason why I use this book is because the Aramaisms that's used, because remember, the people that wrote the New Testament, these were people that lived in Israel, right? Or Palestine, first century Palestine, and the common tongue was Aramaic. So a lot of things you'll find in the text, even things used by Shaul or Paul, if you don't understand Aramaic, they don't make sense in Greek. Okay. So I'm going to show you some interesting stuff here. And again, this will be on the Patreon when this live is over. Okay. Now I'm going to show you how powerful reading the Syriac is. Okay. I'm trying to find a good one for y'all. A good one, man. Good one. So this goes into several categories, right? I'm going to go into the categories with y'all so y'all can see this. This is an excellent source. I mean, I love always going back to this, man. This is an excellent source. This is why I study the Syriac, right? And anybody that's interested, if you guys want to get into the Syriac, okay, this is the source that I recommend. The thing that I used to start off with before I got into the academic realm, right? This is the source right here, Basics of Classical Syriac. All right. This also comes with a DVD set as well with academic courses. All right. Again, I will make all these things available. If you sign up for the Patreon, you guys will be able to get access to it. But this book right here is very helpful. Unfortunately, I could not find a small version like this of this, which would be extremely helpful. This is portable. I can take it with me wherever I go to refresh on some things. I don't actually have that for this. But I'm going to show you some cool things and why I get into the Syriac. Because it's Middle Aramaic, and when you understand the Syriac, it helps you to understand the Aramaisms that's found within the Brit Hadashah of the New Testament. And this is important because this is the best way for you to get back into the mindset of the people writing the Brit Hadashah. Because if you read it in the Greek, it feels like and sounds like a Greek text, except for like Matthew or the book of Mark, because Matthew has so many Hebrewisms in it and Aramaisms in it. Even scholars can read it and say, man, we know that this originally was not in Greek. You know what I'm saying? And then the church fathers also attest to that. You know what I'm saying? Eusebius attests to that. Jerome attests to that. Several church fathers attest that there was a Hebrew version. And, Jerome says, we don't know who translated into the Greek. We don't know. This is what he said. I didn't make this up. But watch this. Split words. Undeniable evidence of primacy, right? I'm going to get into that for you guys, right? But let me scroll down. Okay? Semi-split words, poetry and word plays, because you have parallelisms that's found in Hebrew prose. okay? And even in Hebrew poetry, okay? You'll find Yeshua using a lot of that in the book of Matthew, okay? Semitic idioms, extremely important. If you do not understand Semitic idioms, you're going to be lost reading or writing in Greek from a person who has an Aramaic thinking cap on. Okay. This is why I also encourage people to get into the Targums, which is the Aramaic paraphrasing translation of the Hebrew liturgical manuscripts or scrolls that was housed by the priests, but they had these Targums because most of the people coming back from Babylon were speaking Aramaic. Okay, Semitic idioms, miscellaneous proofs, minor variants, loan words, bad Greek grammar, and more. This stuff, this right here is absolutely gold. Historical external proofs, contradictions in the Greek New Testament prove Peshitta primacy, and they're really trying to say the Syriac or Middle Aramaic primacy, which I subscribe to. All right. Somebody says the chapter 8 says, I don't know Aramaic. What hope is there for me? Then it goes into the Greek of the GNT. It's not Koine Greek, a lengthy refutation of the Syriac primacy, which I disagree. Now, this is what I disagree with this author, because I believe that the Old Syriac Sinaiticus Palimpsest and the Curetonian Gospels give you more primacy because it's earlier. That doesn't mean you don't find things in a Peshitta that could probably antiquate or that's antiquated or older, but I subscribe to the Old Syriac Sinaiticus Palimpsest, and I've gone through this book, and a lot of these things I would say 75% I agree with, but when it touches on this, I disagree. Technical reasons I won't get into here, but maybe in a later video I could probably touch on that for those who are interested in that, right? Mistranslating the genealogies of Yeshua, et cetera, et cetera. Now, what I want to do is I want to read for you these things. So I want to show you split words. And then from split words, I want to show you Semitic idioms. So I'm going to go to page. And I wasn't even planning on going into this tonight, but hey, why not? Page 13. I'm going to read for y'all, and I'm going to go into page 13, 105, and 131, right? And I'm gonna show you this. This is why I get into the Syriac. I hate the Greek, but I love the Syriac. Let me show you these things, right? Let's get into the first one, okay? Split words. All right. Split words are invaluable to the Aramaic primicists as they show the Aramaic to be superior to the Greek, show how Greek variants are caused by different translations of the Aramaic, and often solve anomalies, errors, and contradictions within the New Testament by allowing for more correct readings. Split words are polysemous words, polysemy having multiple meanings. The relevance of polysemy in the case for Peshitta primacy, the belief that the New Testament was written not in Greek, but in Aramaic, I would say the book of Matthew was originally written in Hebrew. We know that, or Aramaic. More than likely it was Aramaic, not Hebrew. And then we also have Aramaisms loaded in the book of Mark. And then also with the general epistles, we find them. Now, the Pauline epistles, I subscribe to the fact that they were all written in Greek, right? That was my position because of the places that they were sent to. All of that was written in Greek, right? However, there are Aramaisms in there, which the author here shows, right? But look at this. It's mind-blowing. In a more general sense, a split word isn't confined to Greek variants where a single Aramaic word or root is in question. Examples of Greek translators clearly confuse two similarly spelled Aramaic words, leading to variances in the Greek are also split words, as are examples where a variant is caused by different translations of an Aramaic idiom. This is how it works. I'm going to show you. Before I go into that, the problem that I have with the Peshitta as it is today is that there are some grammar in the Peshitta that does not make sense in Syriac or Aramaic because it's been retranslated from the Greek into the Aramaic because those portions were missing when they were putting together the Peshitta. And anybody who reads the Peshitta knows it and knows the Greek, you can see these things, right? But watch this. When comparing different Greek New Testament manuscripts and or the English translations of said manuscripts, many differences are apparent. Sometimes there's just a one-word difference among verses from different manuscripts. In basic cases, some Greek texts will have the word Y as an example, and some will have the word Z. Now, this is one word often changes the meaning of the verse. So these variants are quite important. Now, suppose we have a manuscript that has as the word in question, the word known as X. Suppose also that this manuscript is in another language, an ancient Semitic language, and that X in this language can be translated to mean Y and Z. Which manuscript would be more reliable, right? Of course, manuscript X would clearly be superior to manuscripts Y and Z, and it is also clear that both the Y and Z manuscripts are translated from manuscript X, as the manuscript X happens to be in another language and happens to be in a language used by Yeshua, the apostles, and the earliest Christians, Judeans, and other Semitic peoples, right? And he goes on to an example of that here. Born or boast, right? Burn or boast. 1 Corinthians 13:3. The KJV says, and though I bestow all my goods to feed the poor, and anytime you see italicized or in brackets, that means it's inserted there for context, so you can understand it in English, right? Or it's pointing to a subject that is not directly mentioned in the verse. And though I give my body to be burned and have not charity, it profiteth me nothing. The ISV says, even if I give away all that I have and surrender my body so that I may boast but have no love, I get nothing out of it. Versions that say burn are variation thereof, and it gives you all of them. The versions marked by an asterisk has footnotes that mention that early manuscripts have boast or a variation thereof rather than burn. It is noteworthy that the Alexandrian NU text also says boast also. The Alexandrian NU is the Alexandrian text type manuscripts that I told you guys were the earliest manuscripts that we have that were found. And when I say manuscripts, I mean as complete as possible. You know, some of them are fragmentary, some of them are complete. But then there's other fragments that predate that, which are called the P fragments, and they predate the Alexandrian text. But looking at the P fragments, we can tell which tradition families or text type traditions that they've influenced or the transmission comes from. All right, or ends up in, I should say, right? Versions that say boast or variation thereof, ISV, NLT, Rotherham, right? Now, it just so happens that the Aramaic root can mean to burn, but it can also mean to boast. It is clear that the disagreement in the Greek text point to the Aramaic original. Here's a verse from the Peshitta translated by Paul Yaunin. And if I give all my possessions to feed the poor, and if I surrender my body so that I may boast, but do not have love, it profits me nothing. All right. The reading, kaushwamai, I might boast, is in Greek manuscripts like I-46, IAB 048, 33, 17, 39. The competing reading, which is koshmai, I will burn, is found in Greek manuscripts such as blah, 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 and a host of patristic writers. A few other Byzantine Greek readings include kaushmai, I might burn, and the root is kaush, which means it might be burned, right? And again, in Greek, when you look at the suffix, you can determine the case and you can determine the gender and all that other fun stuff, right? But I hate the Greek, right? Dr. Bruce Metzger, which everybody should know now. If you haven't heard of him, you should know who he is, because he's somebody that's referenced a lot amongst, you know, Christian apologists and people who deal with the text, right? Notes that the latter meaning is a grammatical monstrosity that cannot be attributed to Paul. This is what he says. This is clear evidence of the Aramaic roots of the various Greek texts. And he goes on and on and on. Let's go to 105, page 105. Okay. I'll make this quick because this might be boring to some people, might be interesting to some other people, but we'll get into some other stuff. This is stuff that we have to be studying in our community, right? So let's go to 105, right? It says, unfortunately, due to translations from the Aramaic into Greek, much of the New Testament's poetry and wordplays have been lost. It turns out that our Messiah was a poet of a greater caliber than William Shakespeare, Christopher Marlowe, or Michael Stipe. One of the most outstanding and beautiful aspects of the Bible has been lost in the mainstream due to the Greek. Even some of the Bible writers, such as Paul, have shown incredible creativity in their books. The original Aramaic Bible was indeed a masterfully crafted work, as one would expect, being written by the Almighty. Now, that right there is a religious insertion, right? Nevertheless, of course, the Greek copies written in so-called Koine Greek look like something that had been a deadline of last week. Greek scholars often admit the bad writing evident in the Greek, and some even know that the Greek New Testament seems to have been copied from a Semitic language and has many similarities with the writing style of the Septuagint. The Septuagint is an old Bible translated from Hebrew, a Semitic language, to Greek. Sounds familiar. As per usual, there are many, many examples of this type of linguistic internal evidence. Due to space limitations, we only look at a handful, right? Now, here's one in Matthew, all right? The Janus parallelism. The King James says, another parable put he forth unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like a grain of mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field, which indeed is the least of all seeds. But when it is grown, it is the greatest among herbs and becometh a tree. So that way the birds of the air come and lodge in the branches thereof, right? Janus parallelism is a very unique feature of Hebrew poetry and has now been found in the Peshitta. The first example of Janus parallelism was discovered in Song of Songs by the late Cyrus Gordon. He termed this extremely creative poetic device Janus parallelism, where a passage exploits both meanings of a word with two meanings simultaneously. Here is in his own words. One kind of parallelism is quite ingenious, for it hinges on the use of a single word with two entirely different meanings. One meaning paralleling what precedes and the other meaning what follows. Since he first published his findings, more have been discovered in the Hebrew Bible. Here's an example in the Peshitta, where it says in its translation, the kingdom of heaven is likened to a grain of mustard seed, which a man took and sown in his field, right? And it showed you in red, right? The difference is when it has grown, it is greater than all the herbs and becomes a tree so that the birds of heaven will come to nest in its branches. Here, the words for birds can also mean flowers or blossoms. The two-faced genus aspect is that taken in parallel with what precedes, seeds, herbs, and trees, and it can be understood as blossoms. Taken with what follows, nesting in branches, it can be understood as birds. Do you understand that? Here's how it pivots. Seeds, herbs, trees, brackets, blossoms, birds, heaven, nesting, branches. So you'll see the insertion of these words, blossoms and branches, blossoms and birds, but it's understanding the parallelisms, right, that you get from understanding Aramaic poetry, that you can understand how it's translated with the words blossom and birds is used. See how it works? This is a very authentic feature with precedents in the Old Testament impossible to be conveyed in the Greek. Here is a genus parallelism identified by Cyrus Gordon in Songs of Songs. And we see this is in Hebrew, right? The blossoms are seen in the land, and the time of pruning has arrived, and the voice of the turtle dove is in our land. I use this all the time where I tell people, this is how you know that the spring season is there, right? And it goes into blossoms are seen in the land, the time of singing has arrived, and the voice of the turtle dove is heard in our land. The Hebrew word, you have your zayin memre, can mean to prune or to sing, thus parallel with what precedes. It takes the meaning to prune, parallel with the voice and heard which follow. It takes the meaning to sing. Woo, this is deep. Let me get into the last one, 131, right? If y'all are interested in this reference, let me know. I'll make sure I get it to y'all, okay? 131 is the last one. I'm going to end off it, and this has to do with Semitic idioms, all right? Scroll up, scroll up, scroll up, scroll up, scroll up. All right. Many Greek premises claim that since the authors were Semitic, there will be obviously Semitic idioms, even if the writing was done in Greek, negating the use of Semitic idioms as proof for Aramaic primacy. This is unbelievably flawed thinking. So that means that the majority of the recipients, allegedly Greek-speaking non-Semites, wouldn't have a clue what the authors were talking about. Surely, with all his inspirational power, God would have been able to make the authors write with Greek idioms so that the alleged Greek-speaking recipients would understand the message. This never happened. Even the Greek copies lack Greek idioms and are overflowing with Aramaisms or Aramaicisms. Based on Semitic idioms alone, it is safe to assume that the original recipients of the New Testament books were Semitic, or at least spoke a Semitic language like Aramaic. So what is an idiom anyway? An idiom basically is a cultural expression, I'm adding that, though there are many more different definitions. Something we may convey a certain thought or feeling that does not come from the individual meanings of the words. For example, some idioms in English are a bad egg, a bad person, blood is thicker than water, relatives are closer than friends, and they are at 6 and 7s. They are confused. Idioms in books convey a meaning that cannot be gleaned from the literal text. Idioms appear in many books, and the Bible is no exception. Have you ever heard someone say the Bible doesn't mean that literally? They're referring to a possible idiom. Now we have a problem for Greek primacy. The New Testament is lacking in Greek idioms and is filled with Aramaic idioms, which I wholeheartedly agree with. Then they give an example in Mark chapter 16, verse 18, which is interesting when it says about the picking up of snakes. The KJV says they shall take up serpents, and if they drink any deadly thing, it shall not hurt them. They shall lay hands on a sick, and they shall recover. Zorba translated many Eastern idioms and metaphors, literally not knowing their true meaning. For instance, you shall handle snakes. Zorba didn't know that the word snake refers to an enemy. A better reading for that section of the verse would be, they will handle their enemies. Now, imagine if these Christian groups, cult groups, who play with snakes and stuff like that, understood that these were Semitic idioms that you're finding in the text. You would not literally translate it into snake, because the symbolic understanding of snake based on reading Bereshit would mean something that's an enemy or something that's an adversary, right? Well, that's how you understand it. I'm going to end off with that. But I just thought that it was interesting that I bring it out to y'all, because the more we understand these things, the more sense that you can make from the Brit Hadashah. And this is the angle you have to take with our brothers and sisters that reject the Brit Hadashah, you have to give them this understanding, because in their mind, this is Greek. Understanding Greek word will bring them back to the Aramaisms, the idioms, the semi-split words, the split words, right? Translations that don't make sense in Greek at all, and show them how this was actually something conceived by Aramaic speaking peoples, okay, from out of their culture. So if I was writing a book in English, right, a lot of what you find there will not be proper English, right? It will be English based on my level of education, and English based on jargon that I use, slang that I use, abbreviations I may make on certain words, you know what I'm saying, shortening of words and so forth. So you'll get my form of the English based on my culture. Well, if I was translating a story about me into another language, it would be the same thing. If I was talking about me in Spanish, it wouldn't be proper Spanish. It would be the Spanish that I understand. And some things in the Spanish that you read in Spanish will not make sense unless you're part of my culture. See, if people were part of my culture who understood English and Spanish, and they see the idiom, they can identify and say, oh, yeah, that's not something native in Spanish. That's something that we use in this culture where we speak broken English in this city, you know what I'm saying, in America. So this is a better way of understanding the text when you're reading it. And this is the level of the depth in which I dive into it, because this is the best way that you can translate this over to people who reject the Brit Hadashah. Okay. Now I know for some people, I know some people may not care about this, but to me, I tell people all the time, understanding the language, understanding the context, understanding the history, understanding the culture, right? All of these things are necessary for you to reconstruct and restore the ancient pre-exilic culture, right? When Yeshua came on the scene, that is what he was doing. Unbeknownst to his peers, because they had a Second Temple Judaism and some of them were Hellenized, he was trying to take them back to the old ways. This is why when he gives Matthew chapter 5, whole bunch of parallelisms all throughout there, whole bunch of Aramaisms all throughout Matthew chapter 5. But if you don't understand Aramaic or Hebrew, when you read it in Greek, you're going to take it literal and it's not going to make any sense. You're not going to get the true essence of what he was trying to convey. And when you read this book right here, it explains it. It breaks it down to you. All right. Another gem here. Another gem. All right. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. All right. All right. So let me transition away from this. Like I said, if you're part of the Patreon, this book will be available once I close this live. Once I shut the live down, you guys can access this book. Anybody else, you can just email me, kingdomharmonger@gmail.com, and I can send it to you if you want a copy. Like I said, all these resources, if you just pledge on our Patreon, you get access to all these resources, man, all these resources and more. Everything else, other benefits that come with our Patreon, and that's www.patreon.com/DivineProspect. You can see the link for it down in the description below, or one of my mods, like the sister Nisi's PC, she just dropped it in the chat. You guys can see it right there, right? That's it right there on the screen, okay? So again, this stuff is important. He said the name of this book. Let me show you the name of this book, okay? Because, you know, I don't hide my resources, right? Was the New Testament really written in Greek? A concise compendium of the many internal and external evidences for Aramaic Peshitta primacy, right? Okay, this was, it says it was compiled by Raphael Christopher Lattister, edited by Ewan MacLeod, okay? So, man, y'all have to get this book. If you subscribe to the New Testament, you must have this book, because this way you can show anybody in our community who's against the New Testament, nah, this is really an Aramaic text. Let me show it to you. Let me break it down to you. Very simple. This is why I love the Syriac. This is why I try to stray away from the Greek. Okay. All right. So let me close that down. Let's transition forward. All right. So again, telling people, you know, getting to understand things in proper context. I've noticed that there's been a lot of attacks on the Israelite community that is coming in waves. Right? You have either people saying they're leaving the community, or people trying to discredit the community or speak against it. And this is various, you know, groups that are doing that. I think that we have to have more balanced and more evenly tempered individuals teaching this information and operating in the spirit of diplomacy and tact over their congregations, when they speak publicly, when they interface with other groups, because in doing so, you don't have to yell, you don't have to argue, you don't have to point fingers. You can, you know, purposely authenticate your vantage point, cultural vantage point, and be able to substantiate the claims that you make. Because the objective is of having a wealth of resources at your disposal. So that way you can point people to the concrete facts before you even make any conclusions, right? And have them deal with you dealing with the facts. Getting into the language is one of those concrete things. Getting into the culture is one of those concrete things. Getting into the history is one of those concrete things. Getting into the archaeology is one of those concrete things. Okay? All of these things are important. All right? Ariya Yisrael, yes, it is. Yes, the book is a PDF file. All right. And like I said, you can email me for it or join the Patreon and get access to that and all the other books that we have on there. Okay. All right. So family, again, hit that thumbs up, hit that thumbs up. Please hit that thumbs up, family, if y'all don't mind. All right. Make sure you hit subscribe if you're brand new. All right. Share this video if you can. And if you want to patronize the ministry, all that information is in the description below. Okay. So again, to be marginalized in this community, it's interesting because I realized that, about 6.5 years ago or 6 years ago, when I was coming out with a lot of this information, a lot of people in our community, downplayed it, belittled it. Some people were intrigued in it and they rocked with it, but a lot of people downplayed it. But now there's more scholars in other communities that are scrutinizing everything about this movement. And now everybody's coming to me, old leaders and stuff like that are down and asking me for information. And see, that's when I understood that, you have to teach ahead of the curve. See, at least that's how I think. I try not to teach people where they at. I try to teach them about a future state. One thing that I've developed when I've done my counseling is that when you deal with somebody that is going through an issue, you have to put emphasis on a future state. The present state or past states are something that's traumatic, something that is overwhelming. Sometimes they're unable to bear it. And the objective is, how do I get this person's mindset? Because once the mind is there, everything else follows. How do I get the mindset from this past or present state into a future state? So you must speak about things in a future tense. You must speak about things in a future state. You must speak about things ahead of the curve, right? It's like shooting an arrow in a concave or a curvature motion to get it around an obstacle to hit the target. Okay, that's extremely difficult to do, but it can be done if you understand the ballistics of how to get things or logistics of getting things from one point to another. And this is something that we have to do, right? We have to find ways to get our information ahead of the curve, because the moment that other communities start catching up with us, they'll be right here. But what we do, on this path, we're already over here. So they got to play catch up to get to where we at over here. And by the time they get over here, we already over here. This is why I cannot spend endless times debating, arguing, talking about religious stuff when we have so much ground to cover. You understand what I'm saying? So much ground to cover. And there's so many resources. I want to equip the community with everything that they need so that when they encounter a situation, they know how to tackle it. And I'm not just talking about academic. I'm also talking about real life issues as well. If you check out some of the content on this channel, you can see how we do that as well. So going ahead of the curve is important, because when you see these communities attacking Israel, attacking our community, attacking everything that we're doing, it's like, well, how do you deal with it? Now, I recently put up a video with Nick Cannon, and Nick Cannon was speaking to Rabbi Noam Marans. And in that discussion, as you can see, Nick Cannon was trying to be careful with his words, but he failed. He was told that he was wrong and incorrect, and he needs to fix what he was saying. He also admitted that he's eating or dining with this rabbi, which I thought was strange. And then at the same time, he says he lives in the same neighborhood as this rabbi. And he's over here trying to save face. Why? Why are you doing this? You're being buck broke and passed around. That's humiliating. He doesn't see it as humiliating. He thinks it's him trying to reconcile back with this community, but they've already stigmatized you as an anti-Semitic. So there's nothing you can really do to get away from that stigma. You can do all the butt kissing you want. You can do all the groveling you want. You can do all the eating dinners with them and keeping the feast and learning Hebrew you want. That is not going to remove the stigma. What you should be doing is focusing on how your community has a heritage. that's liking unto what these Jews are doing. And you focus on authenticating that before these other communities. Because the moment that you adopt their customs and practices, you lose your heritage. And this is why I did a lecture. It's called How Do We Walk It Out? Because in there, I said that we have to create our own halakha. How we walk this text out has to be unique so that when somebody sees us, they can't say, oh, that's a Jewish group. They can say, whoa, it's something. I mean, I've seen some things, maybe a few things Jews do, but this is something different. They have to acknowledge something different. I'll say, man, I've seen Christians do this, but I've never seen them. They have to see something different. This is the essence of the pedigree that has been given to us that we must take and we must put back out there. It's important. Okay. But you got to remember, whenever they ping them on Farrakhan, they wanted him to denounce Farrakhan. They wanted him to degrade Farrakhan. They want him to say Farrakhan is wrong. What he's saying is evil, it's wicked. I'm not with it. But you see that he had respect for Farrakhan. That's why he couldn't say it directly. He had to weasel out of that. And they were not satisfied with that. They want him to denounce anybody that speaks against their community. And he wasn't with it. But as you can see, he's laughing, you know, that nervous laugh where you're nervous. Yeah, you know, just joking along. You gotta remember, these rabbis are looking at him with a straight face like this. yeah. They don't take him seriously. And they're using him. And it's unfortunate. You know what I'm saying? Apparently, he was supposed to be, allegedly suing Viacom for $1.5 billion. But I've seen more recent reports from Nick Canning's, group or his management PR that says that that's not true. So I'm not sure what's going on in regards to that, right? But unfortunately, what I'm saying is without cultural autonomy, we have nothing to put on the table. Without cultural autonomy, we have nothing to put on the table. We do not govern the culture that we have. And we're not the caretakers and the gatekeepers of our own culture. And we keep adopting things from other people to make up our own culture. We don't have anything. You have no card to play with. So it's about being a think tank. You see, think tanks, what their job is, they operate in social engineering. How can we take this group from this state of thinking to this state of thinking? How can I get my Israelite companions, peers, associates, etc., from thinking dogmatically to non-dogmatic? How can I get them from religion to objectivity? How can I get them from this to that? How can I get them from just reading stuff on a literal text, but don't know how to translate into real life to solve problems? How can I get them from this to that? Only a think tank can architect an idea that can take this group of people from here to over here. This is what we lack in our community. Think tanks have to look at all of the walls, all of the obstacles, all of the things that are hindering this group from getting over here, find ways for the group to get over it, get around it, or even break it down so they could transition on this way. Now, think tanks that are used by the elitists are used to get us to, be in acquiescence with their agenda, using subtlety without us understanding it. But when we create think tanks, it's open for our community to say, look, this is why this is not good. This is not helpful. This is not going to get us anywhere. We must let it go and we must move over here. But cognitive dissonance is one of those walls. How do you get people around cognitive dissonance? Well, there's ways that psychiatrists use various psychological means of getting a person out of that cognitive dissonance state over to this way. So we must study psychology. We must study sociology. We must study all of these things to understand our people, to get them from this state to that state. Whenever we do things here, that is my objective, to get y'all from this state to a better state that's ahead of the curve. But I realize that in our community, people are afraid to shy away from things that they vested a lot of time in. I'm not. I said, look, that was wrong. I'm not there no more. This is where I'm at. I'm evolving. The Ruachs follow those who are hearing, not just those who have read. Let me say it again. The Ruach follow those who are constantly hearing, not just those who have read. So if all you're doing is reading, but you cannot hear, then you have a problem. Yeshua said it very clear. Very clear. What did he say about hearing? The Most High said the word Shema, which means to guard, to observe, to hear. Are we hearing? Or are we just reading? Are we stuck on just reading and we can't hear? Some Christians get so stuck on hearing that they don't even read. You must have balance. You must have balance. All right. So another thing that Nick Cannon said is that his great-grandfather on his mother's side was a Spanish rabbi of Portuguese descent. That's what he said. All right. He said that. All right. Which I thought was interesting as well. All right. Shalom, my brother James. Shalom, James. He's James. The other James says, yes, we need our own culture, create our own traditions. We are the children/descendants of the people of the book. Yes. So when we take those ancient landmarks and use them as waypoints, one thing how I teach my children to navigate, because sometimes my children, because I got young children as well, right? How to navigate, I teach them landmarks. Because you're not always going to have access to a GPS. You must understand landmarks. And landmarks are things that has been laid down that can either be waypoints, right? Or it could just be reference points. Depends. Some of them are waypoints that give you direction. Some of them are just reference points. I teach them to understand the landmarks of any geographical location that you're at. You must know the landmarks. Because if you get lost, you can reference the landmarks to get back. And if somebody has already paved the path before you, they will tell you how to find those landmarks. Now, your objective, if you're leading others, is to find what is the most efficient way to get from point A to point Z. I've seen what my ancestors attempted and tried, and they finally got to this point, but they messed up a lot of times and so forth. But they left the landmarks in the culture for you to properly navigate. And your job is to find the quickest way, which is a straight line, to get from here to there. That is what we are obliged to do today. But so many people are not doing that. They're just repeating, regurgitating, reciting the things of old. They're not using that as a reference point to get further. Okay. All right. Yeshua says, he that has an ear, let him hear what the Ruach is saying. So how do you ground what you're hearing? You must understand what you're reading. Once you understand what you're reading, then you can discern what you're hearing. And when you're hearing something, you can discern it from what you're reading. It's a balance. Okay. All right. All right. Hopefully this is making sense to somebody. Paul Parker says, Divine, what's the name of the book you just ran through? Are you talking about this book or this one? This is the interlinear to get to understand the Hebrew. All right. And this right here is understanding the Aramaisms in the Greek New Testament. Okay. All right. Okay, is this making sense, family? If you guys like what you're hearing, hit 1. Let me know. I wanted to play a video from somebody in a couple of people in other communities that was talking about our community. I don't know if I'll do that on this session. Maybe I might save that for Freestyle Friday. I'll open up Freestyle Friday that way. But if you guys enjoy what is being said, hit 1. Like I said, these sources are on our Patreon. You can sign up for our Patreon and get access to these sources. Email me if you're not part of the Patreon. I'll give you the sources as well. But I don't hide my hand. I show you guys all the references. I'm giving you guys the tools. I'm not telling you to believe me. You know what I'm saying? Don't believe me, but take the tools and find a way to navigate through this walk for yourself. Empower yourself. My job is to educate, empower, edify, encourage. And I always forget the 5th E. Educate, empower, edify, encourage, edify. I said the edify. I keep forgetting what the 5th E is, but it's the 5 E's in regards to teaching. And if your teachers are not there to educate you, to encourage you, to empower you, to edify you, and to educate you, then they failed you, right? They failed you. You need all 5 E's to be an effective teacher, okay? And if you happen to miss one of those, glean it from somebody who has that strength. It can even be in a pupil of yours, because I tell teachers all the time, you're not greater than a pupil, because your job when you teach is to learn from those who are learning from you. You see, it's reciprocal. Somebody will get that. Hopefully it'll help one of those teachers out there. They'll understand that. They'll understand that. All right. So I'm glad you guys are enjoying it. I'm happy that you're enjoying it. So I wanted to play the video, but I'll probably save it for Freestyle Friday, right? I'll play a couple of videos and I'll give commentary, right? One of the things that I want to do is I want to equip the women in our community so that way they can take those tools and defend against other women from other communities that come against our community. The problem with our community sometimes is that, being that the brothers are the natural leaders, right? They always want to lead in every area. They always want to respond to everything. And it's like, brothers, listen, some things the sisters got to deal with. Some things you need to back off and let the sisters deal with, especially if they're dealing with, if there's another sister, let them deal with another sister, or train those sisters to become autonomous so that way they can operate in your absence in the event they need to do something. But a lot of times we teach dependency, and too much dependency can void a person from standing their own ground. And we cannot do that. You understand what I'm saying? We cannot do that. All right. A good leader is known by how others lead in their absence, how their students lead in their absence. That's how you know you got a good leader. If nobody can lead in your absence, then you're not the best leader. If your students can't teach in your absence, then you're not a good teacher. Matter of fact, those students might be in a cult. And I'm using the colloquial connotation for the word cult. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So hopefully this is helping somebody. I don't know. Hopefully it is. But like I say, family, if you want the resources, email me, join our Patreon, you get access to it. And I'm going to stop from there. Okay. Because I wanted to talk about a couple other things. I want to stop from there. Now, this I will say. So Sister Kenesha Morgan says, do you have a video you can reference, or can you speak on your understanding of the afterlife? What happens when we die? So I did do a video on that. Well, not a video. I did a live stream where I talked about it. I'll drop the link in the chat for you, sis. All right. Let me see if I can find it. Let me see if I can find the live stream in which I talked about it. Actually, I also put books up in the Patreon. So Sister Kenesha, I know you're part of the Patreon. There's books in the Patreon that also go into the afterlife as well, right? Maybe I can show it to you in the Patreon. Maybe that will make sense if I show it on the Patreon. But these resources are there, sis. All right. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, here it is. Let me show it to y'all. This is it right here. But yes, I did talk on that in one of the live streams, and I showed that understanding hold on, let me bring this up. All right. Come on. All right, here we go. All right. Let me zoom in. All right. So this is it right here. I'm going to show it on the screen. This is the book. Right? It's called Dust or Dew, Immortality in the Ancient Near East, and in Psalm 49. Okay, by Janet Smith. All right. This right here is on the Patreon. Okay, and then I have another one on a Patreon as well that goes into that. But sis, go to the Patreon and look up this book suggestion here, and you can access it from the link that's attached to this. That takes you to my library, so that way you can see other books in there as well. All right, but that right there will begin to answer the question for you. Okay, all right. So hopefully that helps. Okay, all right. All right. Woo. Sister Millie Love is just dropping that. Just go ahead. She said the word cult as a pejorative concept of Christianity. Monogamy is a cultist mainstream Christian dogmatic practice. In my opinion, I am pro-polygyny, though it is contrary to Christian beliefs. That's facts, because that will be considered cultish because it goes outside the norm or the orthodoxy. But she's right. Cult is a pejorative concept of Christianity. They've used that in order to create these derogatory terms to place on groups that operate outside the norm of Orthodox Christian practices and beliefs. And if you go into the Christian missionaries and early Christian colonists, you'll see the term fetish was used to do the same thing with West Africans that they brought over here to the Americas, West and Central Africans. All right. But yeah, that's true. That's absolutely correct, sis. That's absolutely correct. All right. So Black Ab, I'm not sure what you're saying. Are you talking about fringes? Donnell Jones says, were Hyksos Israelites or no? No, they were not Israelites. Israelites were there before, during, and after the Hyksos. Okay. And I did, if you go back to my lecture series called Crows on a Straw Man, I go into that. All right. So look up the Crows on a Straw Man, and you'll see where I go into that and I explain that. And also in my lecture, the Minority Report, I did way back in 2015, almost 5 years ago. You can go check that lecture out where I talk about it in there as well. Okay. All right. Yeah, Hyksos is supposed to be shepherd kings, foreign shepherd kings. Okay. All right. So now we got about 18 more minutes. So if anybody has a question, let me know. If anybody wants to join the panel, let me bring it up here. No problem, Donnell. No problem. I don't have a problem reiterating. Brother, why do the camps look just like the Masons' uniforms? I don't know. Maybe there may be some Masonic influence, whether directly or indirectly. I don't know. No, I can't speak for them, my brother. You have to ask them, James. I'm not sure. I don't want to misrepresent anybody. So I can't speak for them. I can only speak for me. Unless a leader of one of those camps explained to me, why they dress like that, which hasn't been done. So I can't really speak for that. Okay. And I have to be fair. So I can't speak for that. All right. All right. So any other questions? The link is there. If anybody wants to jump on the panel real quick. No. So I do subscribe to what's called the old Earth creation. I believe that the Earth is really old, and it's older than 7,000 years, 6,000 years. I go to people when I teach them about Bishop Ussher, and his chronology is the one that really codified the 6,000 year young Earth creation theory that a lot of people, utilize today. But the Earth is much older than 7,000 years, right? And remember, the text wasn't designed to tell you how old the Earth was. It's not a scientific treatise. Okay. So, Kanisha, great question. I don't know if they're Israelites. I know about the French Huguenots, but I can't say they were Israelites though. I can't say they were Israelites. All right. So Ascena Phoenix, actually, you asked that question. I talked about that. Was that the last live stream? Ascena Phoenix, go check out the last 2 live streams. I touched on that. I'm not sure if it was the last one or the one before that. Maybe somebody can drop the link in there too, and let me know. Okay. I don't know who shish is. Says you thinking too deep into it. What are you referring to? I'm not sure what you're talking about. Are you talking about me? Or are you talking about the brother James? Who are you talking about? Shish. I don't know who you're talking about. So Black answer, yes, sir. Fringes on four corners or fringes around the garment. Wanted to know if there were artifacts show the four corners on Israelite clothes. There are artifacts. You'll see if you look at the Lachish reliefs, you'll see Israelites that have fringes on, and how they have it. But you got to remember how the garment was made. Was there was a front piece and a back piece that came on you. So there was always a split down the sides. All right, there was always a split down the sides. So across the border is going to be just across the front part and across the back part. But I showed you guys, I explained that it's like a garland or a twisted wreath, something that was used to decorate temples, right, with columns. And I went over this before when I explained what they should look like. And unfortunately, today, I don't see too many groups wearing it the way that it was worn during that period of time. However, there were variations of it, right? Just like if we go to the Kish reliefs, they have one variation of it, and there's an actual literary variation of it. So there's different variations of it, right? So a lot of times halakha is used to actually describe how it should look based on what the community agrees how it should look, right? So it depends on how you check it out, okay? Vincent Lemon says, have you done a lecture on numerology in the Bible? No, I have not done a lecture on numerology. I'm not a fan of numerology because I can't validate that was an ancient pre-Israelite custom. You know what I'm saying? In the sense where numerology is used today. Numerology used today is more esoteric. Numbers was used in the past to signify certain things and also to represent certain things, but we don't have any evidence of heavy numerology or even gematria that was used during ancient pre-Israelite times. We don't really have evidence of that. So my objective is to reconstruct that culture, right? That cultural paradigm, and numerology is not, one of the things that is a hallmark of ancient pre-Israelite culture. So that's why I don't teach on it. But I do understand numerology in its esoteric sense, and as well as its usage in ancient Near Eastern culture. But I just don't teach it because I don't see it doesn't really have a lot of relevance to restoring the culture, right? The way it's used today, I'll put it like that. Okay. Whoa, look at this. See this? Sister Millie going in. There are people who claim they hate Christianity, yet they practice its dogma every day. Facts. I'll give you an example. And I'll try not to bring this out, but I'm gonna bring it out. Okay, I'm gonna bring it out. All right. So I was on Sister E's panel the other day. Those of you who have seen it, there's also going to be a part 2 coming up on August 23rd. There's going to be a week from this Sunday. There's going to be a part 2 coming up of that. So make sure you guys tune into Sister E's channel. Shout out to Sister E. Subscribe to Sister E. Okay. But I was on that panel, and you had Minister Yakoba from Tito Ministries, and you had Elder Michael Holloway on there, right? So if you guys watch that, you'll see that me and Minister Yakoba was going back and forth. And then if you go to the comments, you see me and him is going back and forth. Now, T-Town Ministries, I like a lot of the comment that they have on there about our identity and stuff like that. But I disagree with the Christian perspective on it, right? I don't know these individuals personally, so I don't have anything personal against them. But I realize they have something personal against me. I don't know why. However, I realize that they hinge themselves on a lot of Christian dogma. They do. And because I question that dogma, people take it personal. And it's nothing to take personal. Why are you taking it personal? I simply tell people, listen, this is the culture. The legalism that was placed on top of the culture didn't come to Second Temple Judaism. Do you understand? It didn't come to Second Temple Judaism. And that is what I'm trying to tell our people. Leave that alone. We've used that. It has not got us far. Leave Second Temple Judaism alone. And let's go back to a reconstructed and restored version of ancient pre-Israelite culture. Let's do that. And let's have cultural autonomy over that, because nobody else is really doing it like that. All right. Shout out to my OG brother in the building. What's going on? Moderation. What's going on, man?
Shalom, Mike. How you feeling, man?
I can't hear you.
You can hear me right now?
Oh, maybe it's me. I don't have my speakers on. Never mind.
Can you hear me?
I hear echo though.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. But there's an echo.
Wow. That's crazy.
But yeah, you can speak.
No, I was just saying shalom to you, man. Good to, be on the platform right now. I just wanted to again, like when I had remember, I want to tell y'all a story, man. I've never met DivineProspect in person yet, but one time.
Yes, you did.
Yeah, I was about to get there. One time, like we literally was walking. We literally was walking right past each other.
Wow.
On in Georgia airport, yeah. So I'm walking. I'm like, wait a minute. So I see some children walk past. I see his child walk past. I'm like, wait, I know her from somewhere. And I look to the right. Here come DivineProspect, man. But the reason I came on right now, man, was to it was a brother on there I was going back and forth with on your channel just now, and that's why I said I hope I didn't misrepresent you as far as on your platform, as far as your standpoint or your beliefs. But when you brought in the better sheet, and I still want to know, was that the ESV interlinear?
Yes.
You use? I gotta get that. That was the first one I've ever seen that properly, quote unquote, translated it how it should be, or at least close to. Every other one I've been to, someone has said, I use that one, and I'm gonna say this and I'll be done, unless you have any questions or whatnot. I teach that it's in a beginning. Someone in the chat has said they prefer with a beginning, which grammatically they're not wrong. The bed can be with, or it can be at. Exactly. And I was saying the only way it can be in the beginning, for those that's listening, it would have to have a patach underneath that bet, because the patach is a representation of the definite article. Exactly. So so I do in a beginning, and what I love about that platform, using that one, is a lot of people that has their discrepancies with the it was only the Bible is 7,000 years. It doesn't really talk about it being passed. I said, well, hey, I love the fact that in the language it literally says in a beginning. So it's a beginning before that.
There you go.
So I just wanted to bring that out for those that was in the chat with me, and I wasn't trying to take you away from the teachings of DivineProspect, because I love this brother, man, and what he does for the community. And I just want to come on and tell people to forgive me if I did take you away from what you was presenting. So that's all I really had.
No, you good. And I'm a mutual rule. Okay. There we go. Yeah. So I was gonna say that you're one of the people that I follow you on social media. We follow each other on social media, and I love the fact that you've taken a love affair with the language, right? That you're in study groups where you talk about the language, you put it in your music, you drop gems on your social media, and I pick up a lot of that stuff. You know what I'm saying? Because I like diving into it as well. The problem is, because that's not my main focus, I research and touch on so many different things, right? But whenever I get back to the language, I appreciate it because there's so many things you learn when you get into the language itself. So the translations change, right? But what's there in the language, it doesn't change. And it is what it is. You got to deal with the data that is presented from the language. And a lot of times when people are unable to see the language the way it's meant to be seen. This is why I give them interlinears, because interlinears, when they give you the direct English translation, it actually reads also as the English reads as if it's Hebrew grammar, right? The way that it's structured. And this helps an English person trying to get into the language understand how an Eastern person reads it, how they would understand it piece by piece. You know what I'm saying? So that interlinear, I think, is the best that I've found. I don't think it's exact or correct in some other places. Other places I have to say, well, that's not really good, but it's the best interlinear that I found yet. The only other interlinear that I would say is independent, that's non-academic, that I found is the one that was put the mechanical translation of the Torah. I have that. That's by Jeff Bennett, right? So the mechanical translation of the Bible. I think it's a Tanakh. I think just the Hebrew one. I'm gonna show you that on my screen real quick. That I would say is really good. But again, if you're looking to read it with English grammar, you're gonna be mistaken, or you're gonna be misled, or you're gonna be confused, because it's not designed to be a translation per se, right? It's designed to show you in English how people in Hebrew read it and understand it, right? But I'm gonna show you guys this real quick so you can see what I'm talking about. All right, here it is right here. I'm gonna bring it up on the screen. Give me 1 second. I was able to find it. And maybe you want to look at this too, Shema, just so you can critique it, because that's what I do. First thing I do is just critique it. So you can critique it. But this, let me see if I can find another one. The other one, but this one is really good because he did the whole Chumash, the whole first 5 books. He did mechanical translations for them. And this one I'm going to show y'all is in for the book of Bereshit, or Genesis. Let me see if I can open it up. Yep, use extracted here. All right, I'm gonna bring it up on the screen. Give me 1 second. Right, here it is. All right, so he did. I'm gonna open up the one for Exodus and Genesis so you can see. So, Shema, you there?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Have you read the book that I showed you? Was the New Testament really written in Greek?
No, but I wrote it down as soon as you posted it. Most definitely.
Yeah.
Every book you done put in a Patreon, and anybody that's listening, if you are not subscribed to Patreon, which I am, please subscribe, because this man presents books that you probably wouldn't even think to get. And I got every last book except a couple, and this is one of them.
Yeah. I'm gonna continue to add more and more, but these are invaluable tools that, and I'm also gonna drop a Peshitta in there as well, and Syriac lexicon that I have for people who probably want to venture into that. Because if you know biblical Hebrew and you pick up biblical Aramaic, then you can start to pick up the Syriac. The only issue is some people may have to get, like me, when I go through the Syriac, I go through with the Aramaic square block, right? I have to get used to the Strangler script. But every time I go through it, it's the square script. So it throws me off a little bit when I use the Strangler script. But if it's in Hebrew, I can read it, go through it. When I say Hebrew, I mean the Aramaic square block script. Same thing with Arabic, right? So I have Arabic that's also transliterated into the Aramaic square script. It just makes it easier for me to read it until I can start to identify the features in the actual script itself. But let me pull this up here. I don't know why this is giving me a hard time. Let me do it again. Hold on real quick. All right, here we go. All right, so let me pull it up here on the screen so y'all can see it. Let's get the one for Genesis. And I want to show you guys this real quick. All right. And then I have Black in here, BLK. I'm gonna let you in here in 1 second. Hold on, let me do this. Hold on. Okay. All right. So let me bring it up on the screen so you guys can see. All right, this is it right here. A mechanical translation of the book of Genesis, the Hebrew text literally translated word for word, right? This will be like your extreme form of a formal equivalency translation, right? So let's go down so you guys can see what this looks like. Then he gives a preface where he goes into, his approach, etc., and different features that you'll find throughout. So I'm gonna show y'all. I love this translation, to be honest with you. I think he did a pretty good job with this. And like I told you, this is one of the people that when I first came into the truth, I read his work and he helped to reorient me back to understanding the concrete Eastern way of perceiving the culture. And I used him as a stepping stone to get to the next level to where I'm at today. So he helped a lot with me in this walk. Now look how he translated it here, right? And this is why I love this guy's work. Now, again, I'm not saying this guy's a scholar. I'm not saying he's in academia, but he's somebody that has learned the language formally and informally, and he's teach the language. But what he does is that he shows you the concrete Eastern perspective of the text in opposition to the Western Greek abstract aspect of the text. And now it's interesting because a lot of Christian apologists argue against the Israelite community for taking that approach, but that's because they themselves are Westernized. But watch how he breaks down Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. He says, in summit, he did fatten Elohim at the sky and at the land. Well, what do you mean fatten? That word bara, where you get the word berit as well. What does that word mean? The root word. What does that word mean? Because berit and bara are mutually related, or they're cognates coming from a similar root. But what he does is the reason why he uses that word fatten, which I was like, man, this is deep, because he also goes to show where this word is used elsewhere, and it has nothing to do with this abstract concept of create. Because remember, Hebrew, when you get to the word where it talks about the sun, moon, and stars, the Hebrew word there is not bara. People think, oh, it means bara. No, it's asaf. It's the word to mean to establish something, order something. It doesn't mean create. So when people think that he created the sun, moon, and stars on the fourth day, the Hebrew doesn't support that. So where are people getting that from? From a doctrine, from a dogma, from a presupposition. That's where they're getting it from. But the language does not give you that data. So you have to admit, listen, it's not there in the language. I got it from this, so I got it from that. Then that means you're not staying true to the data in the text. But here he says, in summit, he did fatten Elohim at the sky and at the land. Well, what do you mean he fattened the sky and the land? What are you talking about? He fattened. Well, what is actually going on here when we read in the text? He says he separates and he fills, separates and fills. So what he's doing, he's creating a space and he's fattening it with something, populating it with something, because that's the mindset in Eastern terms is you're fattening. When you're filling something, you're fattening it because they're equivocating that to a sacrifice in which the animal fat is really being used for things to burn, etc. So the fat portion of it, you use it also to put into clothing to keep you warm. See, when you go into the culture and how they live, you start to understand, oh, fat is a substance used for filling things. So when we look at the word bara, going to bari and going down to the root word, this can also take on the denotation of fattening something, how fat can be cut and divided, right? Fat can be removed, fat can be used to fill. So he fattened the sky and the land. He fattened it because prior it was nothing there. He's filling it. So he has the substance there, but what he has to do is shape, form, and fashion it. Create this space and fill it with something. Create the sky, separate the waters from the waters and fill it with something. Create the land, rise it out the water and fill it with something. Create the deep and then fill it with something. He's fattening all of these things. Separating, opening up the space and fattening, filling it in. Opening up the space, fattening, filling it in. Open up the space, fattening, and filling it in. That's what he's doing. So when you look at the way he's doing these direct translations, it's interesting. The second one, we have tohu vahu. He says, and the land she had existed, confusion and unfilled, and darkness upon faces, the deep sea, and wind, Elohim powers, much flutterings upon the face of the waters. It's interesting. And the land had existed in confusion and was unfilled, and darkness was upon the face of the deep sea, and the wind of Elohim, the powers, was much fluttering upon the face of the water. And Elohim power said, let there be light. Your word or there's for light. Let there be light. So it's interesting.
This person went in on the parsing, man. Whoever did this went in on the parsing. That's all I had to say. Go ahead. I just wanted to jump in and say that this is amazing.
Yeah. So what I did was, when I did my parsings for Better Sheet chapter 1, because I did the whole chapter, right? And I'm telling you, that's not an easy task, right? Because not only do you have to understand the grammar, not only you have to understand the morphology, not only do you have to understand the syntax, not only do you have to go back and look at the semantic value. How do you know what semantic value to attribute to a word, right? That is, I think, the most difficult part of parsing that I think people overlook, because sometimes what they'll do is just use one lexicon and reference that one lexicon and say, okay, I'm gonna use this meaning from this lexicon and put it here. I don't do that. The text says 2 or 3 witnesses, so I get at least 3 lexicons. And what I do is I use 1 witness, 2 witnesses, 3 witnesses, find the common denominator, and then see if that fits the context, the culture, and the history, if it's a historical text, right? And then I validate that through archaeology and sister cultures that have spoken on the same subject. These are the various ways that I utilize, or methods, to parse something and translate. That's why it takes me much longer to do it. And when I did that Genesis chapter 1, I think it took me like a month and a half to get through it. It was a lot, because I was using those various methods to establish it. And I'll reveal it for y'all. I'll show it to y'all probably next month, because I got to go back and touch it up. I did it about 2 years ago. But when I did it, I went to this and I looked at this independent of, what I did. And I said, wow, it's a lot of it is lining up. But then some things I said, why did he choose this? And why did he choose that? And in this preface, he explains some of that. And in some of his videos, he talks about these things as well. So then he gave me much light in regards to, no pun intended, where or is there, no pun intended, but he gave me a lot of light to consider certain things that I wasn't looking at before. It's like, wow, that's interesting. But then when you do parse it, you find out that Elohim can be a collective noun, right? Hence, when you see the plural and then you see the singular verb, or the verb precedes the noun, sometimes some people say that's a majestic plural. Some people who are strict monotheists, they try to take that route. People like me who are henotheistic, we take the route where it's a collective noun, because the noun itself is supposed to agree in person, number, and gender with the verb. But in this case, it doesn't.
Exactly.
However, there's other unique features that you'll see in the text where you'll see this as well, and not just for Elohim. So it's all in understanding the culture, the language, the history. When I say history, at what point in history were these people at when this was being laid down, right? So this right here, I would suggest anybody that wants to get into the language, on top of using what I gave you for the ESV interlinear, I would suggest you get this mechanical translation of Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. I think he has it of Leviticus as well. And use his with the interlinear, and then learn the language for yourself, parse it out for yourself, and be able to say, okay, this is actually what they would have thought. Like their mindset. Our mindset is, what's the beginning of everything? Their mindset is, that's not important. Why do I need what's the beginning of the one who created everything that I'm here now? What does it matter? He's sovereign over everything here. Why should I care about anything prior to that? But Westernized thinking, Greek philosophers, all they kept pondering on is, what's the beginning of the beginning of the beginning of the beginning? They want to go all the way back to the beginning. The Eastern concrete Israelites were not concerned with that. Hence why you don't see any backstory for the Elohim. You don't see it there. It's not important. It's not important. So this is the one he has here for Genesis. He also has one also for the book of Exodus, and the other one. I can't find the other ones right now, but these two I have. And if we scroll down, you can see here what he adds is he adds a transliteration, right? So what I've done is I've used transliterations, and I've listened to audio of the Bible in Hebrew. That's how I start to learn how to do pronunciations. And because the way that I speak like a heavy New York accent, sometimes my pronunciations is not the best. You know what I'm saying? That's something that I'm working on, and it takes time. But when it comes to analyzing it, I can break it down for you, right? But if you look here of how he's broken it down, wa tomer, your wa tol, your tov, with your dagesh, your cholam, to, your aleph, mir, your mem, right? Your sugol, you have your resh, wa, tomer, la, your la here, bat, bait, patach, and your tav, bat, par, o, which will be your pharaoh, right? Par, you have your pe, dagesh, patach, your resh, your shewa, you have your ayin, and you have your chulam, you have your he, par, o, right? Your le, ki, right? Your le, ki, right? And then you have your wa, telek, your wav, patach, wa, te, your tav, and your zere, your lamed, your zagol, and your final kaf, right? So for people that want to get into the language, sometimes it may be good also to have a transliteration in English with English characters, along with what he has here. Now, what he has here is great. He has the Hebrew, Aramaic square block script. He has the transliteration. He has the mechanical translation, the direct interlinear translation, and then he has a more dynamic translation. This is great because if you're learning the language, this gives you an advantage, right? And you can start picking up things by frequency and by noticing patterns. That's how I learned the language, by looking at frequency of patterns. So if I'm trying to figure out why they keep translating it as and, right? Because I didn't learn formally initially. I took 2 courses online later on, but when I first learned, I didn't learn formally. I learned through patterns because I'm in IT, and in my realm or my field of work, we're trained to identify patterns in code, in architecture, in infrastructure. So I look for patterns. So I'm looking at this word and I said, okay, when I go into the literal translation, not the literal translation, but the dynamic translation, it says, and the Pharaoh, the daughter of Pharaoh, the great house, because that's really what paro means, or Pharaoh is a Greek word for great house, right? And anybody that's in that great house, right? Said to her, walk, and the young man walked, and she called out to the mother of the boy, right? So I'm looking at this word and. I said, okay, I see and here. You know, how can I, what am I looking for and? So I'm seeing wav with a patach. And mind you, this can change, right? The diacritic mark underneath it can change depending upon what is the next letter or the word that it's attached to, right? So you have some words there, like your hey, you have some of your resh, and some other words that may change the diacritic mark of a prefix, right? So you just have to know how things are attached. Same thing can be for your prepositions. Same thing that can be for your conjunctions. You'll see that it will change. However, the consonant will remain the same in most places. In this case, is wav, which will give you your and, right? Your and, and you can start lining up. And said this, this, and that, and says this, this, and that, and you can start lining it up. Like, okay, whenever I see wa, I see the word and. Interesting. And I keep going in, I see another wa, and I see it relates to another word, another word for and, right? Wa, you got and, wa, and you can say, okay, that's a conjunction, that's prefix, that can mean and, that's then attached to the root word, right? But the root word can be modified looking at the diacritic marks, or sometimes it can change based on the suffix. So you start to look, for me, I was looking for patterns. And once I identify the patterns, then I can start following what's going on there. And then I learned formally. It's weird how I learned. Then I started to learn, okay, how can I learn this formally? And then I went through the formal method, and then I kept all my resources, and then I use it to go back and reference and say, okay, that's what this is. That's what that is. Sometimes I may forget. You know what I'm saying? What is a two guttural sound? Looking at your guttural. Sometimes you have a guttural and it has a prefix and it's a preposition or conjunction. It can change the diacritic mark when it's attached to a guttural. And there's laws that govern that as well. I don't know what's going on my phone. All right. So I just want to give you guys great resources, so that way you guys have tools, so that way you guys can navigate through it the same way that I would navigate through it. I try to show my hand, let you guys know the references that I utilize, so that way you don't think I'm over here and not like I do it like, oh my God, I just got this new revelation from God and this is what God told me, and break something down for you when I really read it from a source and I got it from something else, right? Anytime you read a good dissertation, right, for a PhD, a postdoctorate, it's always laden with citations. If you don't add citations in a field that you're writing in, you will fail. Your dissertation won't even be read, because you have to build off of the shoulders of those who preceded you. That is how you show proper ethics for writing a dissertation, a postdoctorate dissertation in academia. Okay. So we have to be honest with the sources that we use, or even other people that we glean from. So if I glean from somebody on something, I'll reference it. Sometimes people say, well, Divine, don't mention me, it's okay. Maybe I won't, and I'll just keep them anonymous, but it's always good to give citations and always good to give references, and never be afraid to show your hand. The only people that's afraid to show their hand are people that got something to hide, or people that are using what they're learning so that way they can boss over you, because they'll create you into a highly dependent creature that you cannot survive independent or autonomous of them. And I never want anybody that follows this in this ministry to be like that. And that's just keeping it a buck. All right. So go ahead, Moray.
I just wanted to say something, man. Like, first of all, like those that's listening, I know you all here. Moray, DivineProspect speak a lot on parsing. And well, not a lot, but sometimes he throws it in there. And that will help reveal a lot of the things. Like this dude, the guy that presented this, what's his name? I got to get this book.
His name is Jeff Bennett.
Okay, I know who Jeff Bennett is.
Yeah,
so
yeah. And
Jeff Bennett did that?
Yeah, he did that.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Wow. Well, I just wanted to put that out because parsing opens a whole lot. And, even if I don't agree fully on things with Jeff Bennett, the thing I love about DivineProspect, I do the same thing with like how Divine, like I like to take those scholars and see what they did because they put a lot of work in. He said it took him a month to do a certain parse. Some people do it in hours, but the problem is they don't do it like Divine does. I mean, culture, context, neighboring cultures, all that stuff plays a part. And that's why I really respect what you do. I'm not on here to try to teach nothing. I'm here to just encourage those that's listening. Like, man, I know you all know that he's legit, but when he speaks on the PL, all of those type of stems, that stuff is important. Somebody asked in the chat, like, why is that important? I think they asked. I don't want to butcher what they asked or what they said, but it is a single word, a single conjugation, a single whatever can change the whole dynamic of doctrine. So I just wanted to put that out there. I love what you do, man. I don't have anything to add on anything. Even if we don't agree on everything, but a lot of stuff we do, you know what I'm saying? Your approach is just amazing to me. And I just wanted to, how people say, give them their roses while they're alive. That's what I'm doing now. You know what I'm saying? Anything can happen to either one of us in the next couple days or years, most high Yah forbid. But if it does, I want to make sure I put that out there. And keep listening to this man. He's very objective, one of the most objective teachers that I know. And those are the type of teachers that you want to learn from. Someone that's objective that could say, hey, I was wrong 3 years ago. Hey, go this route and challenge what I'm bringing out. So with that, I yield. Appreciate you, Divine, man. Got to come to Chi-Town before I move to Mississippi. And we got to do what we do, man. Shalom
Facts.
to you.
I appreciate that. And the title that this man walks in as Moray, I will co-sign that. This brother is humble. This brother's a great teacher as well. And he's been one of my day ones, and I appreciate him. He's not just saying that because he's cool with me, right? He's saying it because, I make an effort at least, right? I never come out and say I'm an expert in this. That's not what I'm doing. I'm a research teacher. Right. So whatever I uncover, I share it for the benefit of those who are trying to learn, or people who are already studying in one area and try to give them a different angle to look at things. Right. That's my job, is to inspire. Right. And that's what I try to do, more than anything else.
I want to say one last thing, you all. One last thing. I knew of DivineProspect, I think almost in like 2012, 13, somewhere around there. I took 3 years off because I was trying to teach back then. I took 3 years off because I was so, all the different doctrines that was out there, the different beliefs, what was being taught. I'm like, what? It's too much confusion. I want to start from the beginning. I took 3 years off. I did exactly what you were doing. I didn't know you did that. And then when I came back 3 years later and I ran back across you, the growth that you accomplished, all praises to the Most High. And I was like, wait a minute, this man doing culture, this man doing language. I mean, you've been doing it forever, but I was like, and that's why I gravitated towards you. I talk about you, often to I got another elder, Chief Zebulon, I think more Shalem.
I love that brother, man. Yeah, that brother is truth, man.
Yeah, y'all too. I don't really gravitate towards a lot of individuals because a lot of people are not objective, and that's what gravitated me more towards you, because you, the journey I'm on, it reminds me of like how you are already operating. Chief Zeb, 15 plus books he's written. I'm an author as well. More Shalane, big on the land. He talks about what you're talking about when you talk about autonomous, being autonomy. Doing autonomy, all them things. These are brothers. I want to say to those that's listening, surround yourselves. If you are in this truth, surround yourself around individuals that are going towards the way of the culture. You know what I'm saying? No knock on the people that's not, because everybody has their purpose. But we're trying to grow as a nation and to go back to how we were as Akmore, DivineProspect would say, pre-exilically. And with that, I yield. Peace to all of you, and more music coming soon. I had to do a shameless plug. Shalom.
That's all good, man. This brother is an excellent musician, man. You want to give a shout out for it, a reference for it? Go ahead.
I don't really have anything. You can find me on YouTube, Shema Talamid, and I have music on there, but I'm working on some things, man. And hopefully I always try to be on Kingdom Harbinger mixtapes, man, because it be heat. So make sure you all get the first one and the second one, because I still bump those whenever I work out. So shalom to all you, man. I don't want to take over the show, nothing like that.
Anytime, King.
Love you, man. Can't wait to see you again, man, in person. Shalom.
All right, Chief. Shalom, all right. That's my brother right there, man. So what I'm showing you guys here is the importance of Ugaritic. And here's another great source for you, those of you out there who wants to get into Ugaritic. The reason why it's important is because it has helped to resolve a lot of glosses in the Hebrew, and also helped with some of the idioms in Hebrew as well when you learn Ugaritic. And what this article here is, what I'm showing you, is about 150 something pages. It shows you the Hebrew and the Ugaritic side by side and explains the various aspects of the grammar, so you can start to see these things and relationships between these things, right? And this is why these things are important for us to really understand the language, right? So there was something here, the G stem suffix, prefix indicative, D stem volative. There was something here that it did a comparative between the two. Loan words. This is the loan words I want to look for. Egyptian loan words. That's page 133. You know what? I don't think this is what I was looking for. Let me see if I could find it for you, because some people would say, well, why you got to learn all of that? Oh, that's not important. I'm like, yeah, it is important. You just don't know how to use it. That's the problem. The problem is when people don't know how to use a tool, they'll see it as being unimportant, right? And this can happen in any field, right? Where you could be given a tool that has a function, but because you don't know how to use it, you belittle it. And sometimes it can happen on people on their job as well. You know what I'm saying? But I'm trying to get this real quick so I can move forward with the show. Let me see if I can find it. Oh, this is the other article I had. It's on Patreon for Sister Kanisha. She asked about the afterlife. This one here, this is called Disembodied Souls, the Nefesh in Israel and Kindred Spirits in the Ancient Near East. All right, with an appendix on the Katumwa inscription. All right, this is also in the Patreon as an article, I believe. If not, I will definitely add it. Okay, so that you guys can get access to that. All right. The one I'm looking for is manual Ugaritic, Hebrew. Is this it? Yeah, I think this is it. This one just does the Akkadian. Okay, well, yeah, this goes into just the Akkadian. So it shows you the Hebrew and Akkadian, which is East Semitic. I can't find what I'm looking for. All right, I'm not going to hold this up because I can't find what I'm looking for. But I want to show you guys another good reference, right? Let me show it to you guys. All right. Let me throw it up on the screen. Here's another good reference. Okay. If you want to know about textual criticism of the Tanakh, to me, this is my go-to person. All right. This is called Textual Criticism of the Hebrew Bible, 3rd edition, revised and expanded by Emmanuel Tov. Okay. So if you really want to get into manuscripts and comparison between the manuscripts and textual variants and all of that stuff, Emmanuel Tov is the go-to scholar that I utilize when looking at differences, you know what I'm saying, in the languages. He goes into the Qumran caves, in the Dead Sea Scrolls. He goes into the Masoretic text. He goes into the Nash Papyrus. I think he references the Septuagint, the Targums. He compares and contrasts all of these things. All right. So for anybody that's really interested in getting into textual criticism of the Tanakh, this is the best person to learn it from, in my opinion. Okay. All right. So, Brother Moray, post your link in the chat. You should be able to, because you are moderator. The sister's asking for that. All right. So I'm sorry, my brother BLK. You can unmute your mic.
Yeah, I'm here, brother.
You are moderator. All right, you got time, man. You can ask a question, you can make a statement, you can say whatever you want. I'll give you the floor.
Nah, man, I'm just in here to listening and learning, man. See, I'm not really big on talking, man. You know, I got a quick question for you. I see you read a lot of different texts. What do you think about the Pursuit of Agrippa?
So the pseudeographia for the Old Testament or New Testament?
The Old Testament.
So which books are you referring to?
You know, they got like the Apocalypse and such and such. They talk about
Apocalypse. So they got
Abraham.
the Apocalypse of Abraham is one of them. Testament of
Solomon. In there.
Yeah. So, so you have like the Testament of Solomon. You have like the Apocalypse of Abraham. Those books. So those books that were written, it's believed it was written during the intertestamental periods, and they reflected various oral traditions that was going around in the community at that time. So I read them just so that way I can understand how the culture was developing, right? What oral traditions was going around that now during the Maccabean, after the Maccabean revolt during the Hasmonean dynasty, this became an age of enlightenment in Israel, where after they overthrew their oppressors, the Greeks, and they set up their own kingdom, they went back to laying down a lot of their oral traditions. And this is when you got to see these other pseudeographical works, right? So I don't see them as canonical. I just see them as representation of the collective community laying down various oral traditions. There are some nuggets and some gems that are there in some of them. The ones that could be corroborated with, you know, the canonized text. And there's some other things that show at what state of development theologically that these individuals were, right? Because that is one thing that inspired the Judeans when they fought against the Greeks. Is Hellenization inspired them to not only document more of their things, but also find a way to convey it to a Hellenized audience, right? So you'll see these features, you know, the rush documentation of oral traditions, and you'll see this feature in regards to how they're conveying their things to a Hellenized audience. Another representation of that would be the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees. These are also believed to be intertestamental books as well, that was written during the, I would say, the epoch of the Hasmonean dynasty, right? That period of time in which they had autonomy to lay down more text in regards to their oral traditions. All right. So hopefully that answers your question. And like I said, I'm not saying it's canon or something that we can hold every word to, but there is some good informational jewels that's dropped in those books. But I would just say, take the rest of it with a grain of salt. But there are actually books on that. Do you want a reference for a book that has all of them compiled.
Yeah, I would definitely love that, because I be grabbing them from like here and there. I never found a spot that had all of them compiled yet.
Yeah, let me see, because I have one somewhere, but I can find it for you on if you want to order it from Amazon or something like that. I can probably get that for you.
Yeah, I be into that stuff. To be honest, I really don't deal with the New Testament, man.
I understand.
The Greek, Latin, and all that. I can't deal with that. Like I tell the brothers I deal with, if y'all could show me those texts written in the Hebrew tongue, I could deal with it. Other than that, I really don't subscribe to it.
Gotcha. Have you seen my lecture that I did called "Baptized in the Tradition of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit"?
Nah.
Okay. So if you take a moment just to watch that objectively, that's exactly what I did in that lecture.
What's the name of it again?
Yeah, I'll drop the link for you. Hold on, give me a second. I'm gonna put it right in the chat for you. And you'll see that the objective was to let me drop it in here. So it's in the chat. I just dropped it in the chat for you, and I can drop it in the back chat for you as well. The private chat that's going to be on your right. It'll be in there as well. And that's the link for it in there. And if you go back and check that out, one of the things that I was working on in there is showing people how do you reconstruct the book of Matthew back into the Aramaic tongue, right? And the book that I showed earlier, I don't know if you've seen it, that was called, was the New Testament really written in Greek?
Yeah.
We know. So when people talk about the New Testament, and the book that I hold dear to is the book of Matthew, right? More so than any other book in the New Testament. All scholars admit that there was a huge frequency of Aramaisms in the book of Matthew. And if you don't understand Aramaic before reading the Greek, you won't understand what's being said in the book of Matthew. That source that I gave earlier helps you to decipher some of that. But when you see how the method that was used there in the narrative to lay out some of the features of what was being spoken, you'll find those same features in the Tanakh itself. You know what I'm saying? So you can tell that whoever wrote it was an Aramaic speaker that held to the Tanakh. You know what I'm saying? But if you read it in the English translation or in the Greek, you're going to lose all of that, right? And even the purpose of Yeshua Bar Yosef, even his purpose, you miss if you don't understand what he's saying. And you only understand the words of a Nabi based on how it's captured in the actual narrative, or the language that's used for it, or looking into the culture at that time, looking into sister cultures, and looking at other cultic items that are found in archaeology to understand what this person is speaking about, what they're referencing, and things along those lines, right? So the problem with or the issue with people who reject, let's say, the book of Matthew outright, is because they have not seen it from this vantage point. And the ones that I'm able to showcase that to, they actually say, wow, you know what? I can say that person at the very least is a Nabi, but based on the things he said and the techniques of literature, like literary techniques or devices that you find in the Tanakh, is used right there in the book of Matthew. You just missed a lot of it if you read it in Greek. But if you go back to a Syriac, you get to see all of it. And it's like, whoa, I never seen it like this before. This is crazy. Because even the church fathers attest that there was a Hebrew original or Aramaic original of the book of Matthew. But whoever translated it into the Greek, we don't know. And I'll show you that reference too, so you can see. There's like people who actually seen the Aramaic Hebrew version and then seen the Greek version. So Jerome, he saw both, and Jerome even made his own Greek version out of the Hebrew because he's one of the few church fathers that can actually read Hebrew and knew Aramaic, right? But he said himself, hey, the author of the Greek translation is unknown. We don't know who translated that. So my thing is, well, how do we get back to the original? And we have enough data to reconstruct the original. And when you read it, it reads like it's another book of the Nebaim or the prophets. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, whoa, I never seen it like this before. And that is what disconnects Yeshua as a Nabi from the way the Christology of Christians have him, right? They put him in a totally different light than the actual intent of what the author of Matthew was trying to convey, right? They just put it in a totally different light. know what I'm saying? And when you go back and you watch that lecture, I lay all that out in that lecture, right? But it can be done. And, you know, a lot of the data for it to be done is there. Matter of fact, since we're talking about that, I'll show you on my screen. You can see from the lecture that I did, I have those sources up there, right? I'm gonna show you right now on the screen. So just take a look at the screen real quick. Let me bring it up so you can see. Now look at this. Hold on. And I did this in 2017 when I was banging on Vocab Malone and James White. Let me share it. Here it is. All right, it's right here on the screen. Let me know if you can see the screen. Can you see the screen?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
All right. So here, what you're seeing here is the references to the book of Matthew in Hebrew by church fathers. Okay. Now here on your screen, hopefully it can move that other stuff. I don't know why it's. All right, here on your screen where it says early Syriac tradition and gospel according to the Hebrews connection, right? So this is the book here by Bruce M. Metzger, which is one of the greatest scholars in Christianity in regards to you know, the Greek manuscripts and stuff like that. He has a book that's called The Canon of the New Testament, Its Origin, Development, and Significance. And over here, he refers to a particular academic author called Vubis. And it says, Vubis, on the basis of a passage in Eusebius, has suggested that in its earliest stages, the Syrian churches used the gospel according to the Hebrews. It must be acknowledged, however, that the text of the passage is uncertain and requires emendation in order to provide the desired support. Now, if you go here in the footnote, it goes to say here, it says, author Vubis studies in the history of the gospel text in the Syriac, right? And then it goes into further where what it's doing is it's saying that the best preserved of the Aramaic version of the book of Matthew is actually in the Syriac text, the early Syriac text. And one of those is the old Syriac Sinaiticus Palimpsest, right? So this was a manuscript that was found in the Sinai Peninsula, in a monastery somewhere by these twin sisters, if I'm not mistaken. And when they took it and they rolled it out, a palimpsest is anything that has a secondary use. So that means originally something was written on it, and then you go and try to erase as much as you can and then write something else on top of it. So what they found was this list of women martyrs, right, according to the Catholic Church. But you can still see the writing that was there from the original, what the original usage of that scroll was for, which was the Syriac version of the Gospels. So what they did was they reconstructed all of that, and they actually created a text from that, right, in the Syriac, and a text also in English, if you want to read a translation. And when you go back and you read it the way that was written there, some passages read entirely differently than what you read in the Greek. It's because this is the best preservation of the Aramaic version of the book of Matthew. So if you go in and watch the rest of this, you'll see where I'm giving firsthand accounts from church fathers that say that that gospel that I just referenced you, the Aramaic version of the book of Matthew, is from the original. The author wrote that originally. You know, it says that but the Ebionites use only the gospel, which is according to Matthew. They repudiate the apostle Paul, call him an apostate from the law. Eusebius says, Hegesippus made use of the memoirs of the gospel according to the Hebrews. And in his Theophany, he says, which is preserved in Syriac, as we have found somewhere in the gospel which the Jews have in the Hebrew tongue, where it is said, I have chose for myself them that are good. The good are they whom my Father which in heaven giveth or has given me. So now what you'll see is this here in Syriac. Theophany from Eusebius is preserved in a Syriac, where we have a textual variant, which means that if you're looking at two manuscripts, one reads this way, one reads that way. And what you do is look at the frequency of the common reading, which, you know, so you look at maybe 1,000 manuscripts and you say, okay, most of them have this reading, but then you'll see like a small percentage of them have a different reading. Maybe a word is different, a phrase is different, maybe it's not there at all. These are called textual variants, right? So what we do is when we go back to even some of the church fathers who quote from that book of Matthew that they saw that was originally in Hebrew or Aramaic, you can use that as a textual variant to measure against what you're reading in the Greek. I do the same work with the Old Testament or the so-called Old Testament, which is the Tanakh, where we look at those various manuscripts, and the objective is, how do we reconstruct the original, because we have no autographs? Well, we have the method to do it, and it can be done, and attempts have been made. So one has also been made with the book of Matthew to reconstruct it back in the Hebrew Aramaic tongue, right? So you'll see that I actually show my methodology of how to reconstruct that in this lecture. And I also show you the variant readings. And I also show you why you have to know Hebrew Aramaic in order to understand the Aramaisms that's found in the Greek version of Matthew itself. So like I say all the time, I'm not a fan of the Greek. This is why I go back to the Syriac, because it best preserves the essence of the original autograph of the Hebrew Aramaic. Now, I'm going to show you something, one last thing real quick, that Jerome says, right? This is what Jerome says, right? He says here, he says, also we read in the Hebrew gospel, and never saith he, be ye joyful, save when ye behold your brother with love. This right here is a quote from the Hebrew gospel that Jerome says that he had in his possession. An illustrious man, right? He says, also the gospel according to the Hebrews, lately translated by me into Greek and the Latin speech, which Origen often uses, because Origen also was a scholar in the Hebrew. He knew the Hebrew. He says, tells, after the resurrection of the Savior, now the Lord, when he had given the linen cloth unto the servant of the priest, went unto James and appeared to him. And it goes on and says, and again, after a little, bring ye, saith Lord, a table and bread. And immediately it is added, he took bread and blessed and brake and gave it unto James the just, and said unto him, my brother, eat thy bread, for the Son of Man is risen from among that sleep. Again, another preservation of the Hebrew Aramaic version of the book of Matthew. He goes on to say, the gospel which the Nazarenes and Ebionites use, which I have lately translated into Greek from Hebrew, and which is called by many or most people the original of Matthew. He's saying this. He says here, in the dialogue against Pelagius, he says, in the gospel according to the Hebrews, which is indeed in the Chaldean or Aramaic and Syrian speech. So he's comparing the Aramaic, which is Syriac is a dialect of Middle Aramaic, because it was different types of dialects of Aramaic, but Syriac is a Middle Aramaic dialect that became a liturgical language for preserving imperial, well, not really imperial at the time, it started to break down, but Imperial Aramaic. And they were writing these manuscripts of the gospel into that speech so it could be given into the Eastern world who were not speaking Greek. So they were not Hellenized. They were not speaking Greek. So in areas of Mesopotamia, areas of Syria, areas of Turkey, and further, they all were speaking Aramaic, because Imperial Aramaic was the lingua franca at that time period in that region, right? So these manuscripts were written to give the preservation of the gospel of Mattiyahu to those people in those regions, right? But he's saying here, he's telling you, he says, which is indeed the Chaldean, Aramaic, and Syriac speech, but is written in Hebrew letters, which the Nazarenes use to this day, called according to the apostles, or as most term it, according to Matthew, which also is to be seen in the library of Caesarea. So he's telling you that this thing actually existed. Now look at this stichometry of Nicephorus. He says, right, the anti-legomena of the New Testament, right? He says, so anti means against, lego, mina has to do with like words, against the words of the New Testament, Apocalypse of John, Apocalypse of Peter, Epistle of Barnabas, and the gospel according to the Hebrews, which is 2,200 lines, 300 lines less than the canonical Matthew. So what does this demonstrate? Well, this demonstrates that whatever was that gospel of Hebrew, right, that was the canonical version, that was before the canonical version in Greek, had 300 less lines, 300 less words, which means 300 lines or stanzas or verses was added to the Greek version that we have today. How do you know what was added and what wasn't? Well, that's not difficult to do if you know what to look for, right? And a lot of those things can be demonstrated with the absence of the nativity narrative, because this original Matthew that these Ebionites, Nazarenes walking around with, they didn't have nothing to do, none of the nativity stuff. After your genealogy is done, it doesn't pick up into Matthew chapter 3, verse 1. None of that nativity stuff is there. The Magi coming to visit him, you know what I'm saying? Him being born of a virgin or whatever the case may be. None of that stuff is there. That's not there. And this is not me saying this. I'm showing from primary sources from these church fathers. They're the ones saying this. They got more to lose than me, but they're the ones telling the truth about it. And this is primary research. This is going to these sources of people who have actually seen this thing exist. It's not me just, you know, just saying, well, yeah, there was a Hebrew version, but it's like somebody says, okay, validate that. How do you validate that? Here's another source right here. Some manuscripts of the gospel have marginal notes. Let me see if I can make it bigger. Marginal notes recording readings of the Jewish, they put the word Jewish gospel, by which our gospel is evidently meant. Some of these were published by Tischendorf, others more recently by Schmidt. According to the latter, these notes were originally made between 370 and 500 by someone who did his work at Jerusalem. And here you'll see all the various textual variants. Matthew chapter 4, verse 5, Matthew 5, verse 22, Matthew 7, verse 5, Matthew 10, verse 16, Matthew 11, verse 12, Matthew 11, verse 25, Matthew 12, verse 40b, the second portion of it, Matthew 15, verse 5. These are all variants that are marginal notes that whoever had these Greek manuscripts, they worked in Jerusalem. They were native Judean. And what they did was they're looking at this Greek manuscript and they're adding these marginal notes from the Hebrew Aramaic version. And they're adding in these marginal notes showing you textual variants within the margin of a manuscript that they read. Right? So this is where when you go into it and you try to find, well, how can we dissect and how do we know, you know, what's written original, what's not? The majority of it is solid, but there is maybe about 15% of it, those 300 lines, that were interpolations, and the way that idioms is expressed and other features of prose, poetry, and I would say dual words, parallelisms, all of these things, you do not understand reading the book of Matthew in Greek. You have to read it in some form of an Eastern version, which would be your Syriac, and then you go back to primary sources of marginal notes, quotations from church fathers to reconstruct the rest. Right? So it's an entire science behind this. You know what I'm saying? But it can be done if somebody's willing to make the effort to do so. Right? And also, as you can see here, I go into the Syriac. This is the Syriac right here in the Stranglish script. And I go and I point out some differences between that and what you find in the Greek. This is the Greek manuscript right here from the Codex Washington. Right? And I show where these differences is at. I highlight them and I underline them. I parse them out and everything. Here, what you'll see here in Matthew chapter 1, verse 16, the agency of the birthing of Yeshua is given to Miriam or Mary in the Greek manuscript. But if you go back to the Syriac, the agency is given to the father Yosef. He's the one responsible of beginning or bringing forth this individual, which will go to validate a union between a man and a woman to give birth to this Nabi or this prophet. But you don't get that if you just read the Greek and you just rely on the Greek. It messes things up. It's not going back to the mindset of the original Judeans that were there, that kept the law, and they saw Yeshua as a Messiah figure. And if you go back to their understanding of the text and what was going on during that time period, you can better see the New Testament the way it was intended. And the book of Matthew is the best representation of that.
I appreciate you, man, for that.
Anytime, my brother. Anytime. I appreciate you for asking that question. I have the book for you. Let me bring it up on the screen. Okay, there's 2 parts to it. You can also get it on Kindle, right, for $3. Right. I'm gonna show it on the screen. There's volume 1 and volume 2. It's called the Apocrypha and Pseudepigrapha of the Old Testament. Right. It's a volume 1, volume 2, and there's an ultimate version as well. I think I could show you that one as well. The one I have is the ultimate version, but there's several of them. I'm gonna show them to you on the screen. Let me bring it up real quick so you can see. And let me bring it up on the screen. All right, let me know when you can see it. Can you see it?
Yeah, all right, I can see it now.
Okay, cool.
You said this is on Kindle?
Yeah, so they have the Kindle version. This one is $3 on Kindle, but paperback is $40, hardcover is $46, but you can get it on Kindle for $3. You can purchase it on Kindle for $3, right? And Kindle, you can use Kindle on your phone, on your tablet, or your computer, right? And it's a free application you can download, right? And when you purchase it, in the Kindle format on Amazon, it shows up in your Kindle library on the application, the app, when you download it. And these are the two other versions here. The Ultimate version, there's a volume 1. And then there's the Old Testament Pseudepigrapha here, 2-volume set. But these are like physical ones here. But if you want a digital one, a PDF one, this is the best one to get. Volume 1 and volume 2 of this one. Okay.
Got it.
All right. So go ahead and cop that. Read through that. It's a great read. I know I read a lot of them and it was just hair raising for some of them. Some of them I was like, what? Confused. And other ones I'm like, oh, this is good. It's a lot of works, but a lot of these were created during the Grecian period when the Hasmonean dynasty was established by the Judeans after they rebelled against the Greeks. And this was their Enlightenment period where they started to lay down a lot of these oral traditions of the culture. So it gives you a lot of insight into the culture at the time. All right. All right, cool. All right, anything else, Ott?
That's about it, man. Like I said, I'm about learning. Like I watch a little bit of the debates here and there, man. But to me, that shit is like tomfoolery, to be honest, man. To put it real short, man. I had got locked up in like 2015, and here it is, 2020 came out. Brothers are still debating about the same stuff again. 2015.
That's crazy, man.
They talking about, oh, this and that didn't happen, blah, blah, blah. Show the original sources. These sources were shown in 2015. And new people are still arguing, oh, we're going to see the sources. Go back to the old debates. Y'all wasting time.
Facts. We got a community to gird up, man. You know, community to rebuild. You feel me? Because a lot of us are still dead bones in the valley. You know what I'm saying? So if you can't transform this information after doing all these years of research and studying and reading or whatever to fix problems in a community, then what is it any good for? Why are you even using it? Why are you even arguing? You feel what I'm saying? Like y'all can't even use the text to be unified. You know what I'm saying? So what we try to do here, at least in the research aspect, give you all the tools, right? So that if you have the same tools that I have, the same sources I have, we should be able to come to a common ground. Right. Yeah. It's only when you have different things and I have different things and we argue because we have different things that we can never come into common ground. But whatever I have, I give. If you ask for something like you just asked for that, so I give it to you. Like, here it is. Read it and let's have a discussion on it because we both have the same source, the same tools to access the source. And now we can talk on the same plane. That's how you build unity. Brothers haven't even gotten there yet. It's crazy.
It's crazy. Like I'll debate with a brother that's a believer like me. Non-believers, I won't debate with them because you're not going to change me. I'm not going to change you. So this is pointless. It's like you don't believe in it. So I'm all over here wasting time and digging and compiling all of this stuff. You know what I mean? Like they say, the way they say, don't cast pearls to swine.
Facts.
That's what you're doing.
Facts.
Because me, I take it serious as when brothers is like, oh, F your God and F this. And I don't play like that. That's like me saying F your girl or F your kids. You don't want me talking like that. So don't play with me with my beliefs or way of life and this and that because I take it serious.
Facts.
I'm not going to sit here and say
some of the stuff that we got into saved our lives, man. You feel what I'm saying? Yeah. Some brothers change their lives because of this. You feel what I'm saying? So for you to disrespect and disregard that goes to show that we can't even be cool. You feel me? Because if you could do that for something that saved my life, then you'll be willing to turn your back on me or do anything on me on a whim's notice.
Exactly.
You feel me? So yeah, man. So I appreciate you for coming on, my brother, man. Anytime you need any assistance with anything, a source or whatever, man, holla at me, man. Email me, kingdomharbinger@gmail.com, or you're always welcome on a panel whenever we have open panel discussion, man. Ask your questions, or you can share information to enlighten us as well, man. Whatever you've discovered in your journey, let us know. You know what I'm saying? That's how I learned too. Y'all give back to me as well. So I appreciate you, man. All right.
No doubt, man. All right, brother. Peace, man. Peace.
All right, King. Shalom, man. All right. So I'm about to close out because we're getting on 3 hours. So again, if you guys need anything that I've referenced in here, shout out to IM for the donation. I appreciate that. Anybody that is interested in any of the references, you can email me at kingdomharbinger@gmail.com, or you can sign up for our Patreon and get access to a growing library that I'm continuously adding to. So I'm gonna add that book, was the New Testament really written in Greek. I'm gonna add that to the Patreon once we get off, and I'm gonna add another book. Now the ESV Interlinear, that book is already on the Patreon. Okay. Now those who are asking for the statute laws and commandments, the categorization of the statute laws and commandments, email me for that, or you can get that also from the link that's shared in the Patreon. You can get access to that as well. All right. What do you think about the Sumerian Anunnaki creation story, validity, and how does it relate to the Hebrew scripts? Well, there's some cognates that are used to tell both stories, right? Sumerian is not a Semitic language, okay? But we learn a lot from Sumerian through Akkadian, which is an East Semitic language. So whatever's preserved in Akkadian about the Sumerians, you're going to see cognates, because Semitic languages, they have a parent tongue, a proto-language that they branched off from. So whatever was available in the ancient Near East during that time period from Semitic languages is going to be utilized to tell stories. So you'll see some cognates being used, but there's two totally different vantage points on the cosmogony story, right? Or the anthropogenesis story, right? So cosmogony, which you will get your beginning of the universe, and your anthropogenesis is the beginning of how man came about, right? So there are two different cultures. Sumerian culture is not a Semitic culture, okay? Akkadian is Semitic, but Akkadian has translated a lot of things in Sumerian because they conquered the Sumerians, okay? And then what you find later on in the Hebrew text, some things that are cognates between Hebrew and Akkadian, you find in Hebrew, right? Because that's in the language database or language bank that was around that time. You can only pull from what's in existence in order to tell your story, but you can use particulars and make it distinct from the other cultures, right? So that the concept of Anunnaki is foreign to what we see in the scriptures. But you'll see some people that try to group it all together and say, yeah, the Elohim is actually Anunnaki. It's like, what? Where are you getting that from? They're not the same. One is a Mesopotamian, one is a Levantine. Two different areas, two different cultural, spiritual systems. All right. All right. All right. So let me close off, family. Keep it under 3 hours. Try to keep it under 2, but so Sean, yes. So let me show you real quick before I close out. Let me show my screen real quick. I'm gonna show you 2 books. Okay, this is the first one, and you might have this already. Okay, but I'm gonna show you this one. This is the first one. All right, here's your first one. It's called The Igbos in Israel, an intercultural study of the oldest and largest Jewish diaspora by Remy Ilona. Right, this will be one of your first sources, and there's another source by Remy Ilona, which is much newer than this source. And I'm gonna bring that one up in 1 second. Let me go and grab it. Let me grab it. It's going to be here's the other book. The other book here is called Hebrew Igbo Republics, Culture, Religion, and DNA. All right. So Remy Ilona, to me, I think is one of the best sources if you're trying to extract Israelite halakha from a living culture, which would be Igbo culture, that has preserved it. But there's also elements of Igbo culture that is distinct from it. But we're parsing out the preservation of the ancient Israelite culture that's there in the Igbo culture. But he goes into Amenana and Odinani, and he shows you the affinities, right, with ancient pre-Islamic Israel and what's going on today. And he also shows you comparisons between Second Temple Judaism or Judaic practices and Igbo practices. Second Temple Judaic practice is stuff that developed as a need to adapt Torah to the environment. And this is how you'll see, using that same template, sometimes you can adapt and create the same halakha, you know what I'm saying? Which is interesting. He goes into that, like some of the initiation rites, some of the birthing rights, etc. You know what I'm saying? You'll find that. So those two sources that I would recommend that you get if you want to go into that even further. The first one is going to be your Igbos in Israel. All right. And then the other one is going to be Hebrew republics. This one right here. All right. So hopefully that helps. Okay. Shout out to V Kavita. Shout out to who else did I see? Torio, the Most High. Jesus did not come from Hail Zeus. They're not related. There's no way related. So anybody that tells you that doesn't understand language, transliterations, and even translations of words. They don't understand it. Okay. Shout out to Jack Max in the building. Yahweh Stop, Son of Light. What's going on? Christian and Dig Mabote. Where's the fulfillment of Amos 9:11-15? I recently started to read the prophets and noticed that many prophecies seem to not have come to pass yet. Excellent question. I can tackle that tomorrow or later on today on my Freestyle Friday. So Christian, please subscribe to this channel if you're brand new. Hit the thumbs up. Check out our Freestyle Friday session where I can answer that for you then, bring that up. I want to show some videos of some arguments that people are making against our community and how to tactfully respond to them. And also, we are still going to have our Q&As and our open panel discussions as well. So we'll continue everything we're doing on here and there. Shout out to my brother, Prince of Peace of Israel, servant of Yah. What's going on, family? What's going on? Thank you, everybody. Ebony Knowledge for participating in the chat. My brother, Seth M. What's going on, Seth? I had inboxed you, my brother, on Facebook. I don't know if you got it yet, but I inboxed you. And shout out to everybody else that's in here. Shout out to my admin, Sister Nisi's PCs, Moray Shamatami Yahoo. I appreciate that for you guys doing your moderation. Thank you guys for spending your time at 3 a.m. on Thursday night, Friday morning with me. You know what I'm saying? Getting this information. Christian, I went over that. Are Bantus Israelites? No, all Bantus are not Israelites. All Bantus are not Israelites. But are some Bantus Israelites? Yes. Are the Bantus that got taken into the Atlantic slave trade infused with Semitic blood? Yes, they was. And that's how we got brought over here. Is there any primaries with that? Yes. If you go to a primary that I've mentioned on this channel before, where it talks about the Loango Coast, and Loango Coast had one of the slave trading ports there. The Vili peoples, they had exploited other base peoples, and one colony of individuals that lived amongst there in the Loango Kingdom on the coast was a colony of Jews or Israelites. And after the Vili people were done working with the Europeans in the slave trade, that community disappeared. And one of their practices was to take from the base people first, prisoners of war, and or the outcasts of society. This was how they sourced their slaves before they handed them over to the Europeans to bring them into slavery. Right. So that's one thing if you're looking at Central Africa and Loango Coast and Loango Kingdom. We also have other references, other areas on the Western shores. For example, the Niger River is one of them. Guinea, Senegal, Gambia, the Ivory Coast, which I just mentioned, the Gold Coast, the Slave Coast, the Bada Biafra. All these regions where Bantu peoples were in these regions were all had Israelites mingled in with these various groups, and they were also brought over here to the Americas. And some of them are still left behind there in West and Central Africa as well. So all Bantus are not Israelites. I don't subscribe to that doctrine. But there are Bantus that are Israelites. All right. So hopefully that answers your question. All right. Yahweh Stop, Son of Light said, what's a good historical source for showing that in the 1st century AD, the early Christians called Christ Yeshua? Great question. I think the best source you'll be able to get that from would be any kind of Syriac sources. So there's some early Syriac sources you can get that from. Again, if you want to ask me that tomorrow, I can bring up another source for you on that. Just let me know. And I got you. Okay, I got you. Did Hebrews sell Hebrews into the transatlantic slave trade? Possibly. Yeah. Possibly. I wouldn't say no. I would say there would be a high probability of that, because when you research, some individuals were selling their own family members into slavery. So it wasn't just Hebrews selling Hebrews. You had native indigenous Africans selling other indigenous native Africans as well. I have tons of sources on this if anybody has any questions on that. And I can share it with you guys so you can read the same thing that I'm reading. And I have no hidden hand. Whatever source I got, I give back to you guys. And we read the same thing and we come to our conclusions together as a team. That's how it works. And that's how we should be working here in this community. All right. All right, fam. So let me get off of here. Thank you guys for taking time out to enjoy this session. Hopefully what was said here can encourage you, has edified you, that has empowered you, that has educated you, and that is giving you the tools that you need in order to be well adept. Some things may be technical. Some things may have gone over your head. But like I always tell people, it's better to dig a deep well with a huge reservoir than to dig a shallow well and to need more water. So when you get all this information from this channel, these sources, it's for you to dig a deep well, because you never know when you have to go to that reservoir in the event of a drought, okay? Or in the event that you need to give water to others, okay? So hopefully that has encouraged somebody. So thank you guys for watching. I appreciate your involvement in the chat. Thank you guys for sharing this video, for hitting a thumbs up, for your donations and your support and your prayers. I appreciate everyone here. I see you guys again on our Freestyle Friday session. If anything changes, I'll let you guys know in the community tab or on my social media. If anything changes, if I'm unable to do it. But I want to sacrifice this time just to talk to y'all and to provide sources and answer some questions. And hopefully it's blessed y'all. All right. So thank you guys for watching. I love you all. Peace and shalom.